Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063 The Game, and the Game Nashville app. We are streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Predators regular season finale tonight at Pittsburgh, puck drop at 6 p.m. So pregame coverage will start right here on 1025, 1063 The Game, starting at 5 p.m. Last game of the season, D-Mase, and the Predators had a back-to-back this past weekend and won both against teams that they should have beaten. Chicago and Columbus back at home. They got the vets some rest. UC Soros got some rest. Lankinen was in net against Chicago. So Predators took care of business over the weekend. They beat teams that they should have beaten. Now it all comes down to tonight against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just 1 point, and they clinched that wild card one spot. But D-Mase is here. Willy Donick will join us later on in the show. He is in Pittsburgh. He's out at morning skate, so we'll get a recap of what Willy's seeing on the road once he joins the show about 12:30 or so. But D-Mase is here. D-Mase, how we doing?
Hey, I'm doing well this morning. Bright and sunny and warm,
it's
just
beautiful
like I like
today.
it. Man, oh, man. This is my type of weather. I'm happy. I'm happy now.
You and me both.
I don't need anything else.
I
got my tea.
There we go.
Got my sun.
Sunny.
Got the mics. Let's roll.
That's all we need. That is all we need. All right, we'll catch up with TD, Teron Davenport at 1 p.m. We'll get TD's thoughts now that we are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. Next Thursday, the draft is going down in Detroit. So we'll get TD's thoughts on things that he's been hearing, some of his reaction from Brian Callahan, Nick Holtz, and Denard Wilson's press conferences. But D-Mase, like I said, we are just less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft.
Get it over with.
You want to get it over with?
Yes, let's just get to it. All this stuff in the middle, let's ease it right to it. Let's start the draft tomorrow.
I'm not ready for it quite yet. I want a little bit
Too
more
much
tea.
nonsense go on.
I want more nonsense.
Okay.
I love the nonsense this time of year. It's lying and it's ridiculous stories, and we will continue to get into that. But I'm here for it. I know once the draft will come around, I'm like, okay, thank goodness. Like, I just need the draft. I need some action. I need to know who the Titans are going to take. I need who's going where and which quarterbacks are going to who. And is J.J. McCarthy hype really real, or is he just going to go off the board like in the third round? But for right now, I'm going to enjoy the nonsense and enjoy all
Might
of the...
as well.
Why not?
It ain't going to stop.
It's sunny, so why not?
It's not going to stop, so...
So this was a recent, this is where I want to start here, is on a recent mock draft from Mel Kiper and Field Yates. I would say the two most draft guru kind of guys at ESPN. They did a dueling mock draft. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
First overall pick, Mel Kiper had the pick, Caleb Williams to Chicago. And he surprised there.
No, I mean, that's easy.
That's easy. That's just Sharpie that one in.
Yeah.
Don't even pencil it. Don't even write it in pen. Put it in Sharpie. Jaden Daniels, 2, to the Washington Commanders. I think that you could deliberate Drake May at 2 or Jaden Daniels at 2, but either way, one's going to go 2 and one is going to go 3, which is exactly what Mel Kiper had at number 3 to the Patriots, Drake May. Number 4, Arizona Cardinals, Field Yates had that pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. No surprise there.
No surprise, but this is where I think it can potentially get sticky because Monty Ossenfort, there has been rumblings about him. Hey, the pick is there for anybody to come up and move. So I don't have anything against the person, but the team may be not there. It may not be the Arizona Cardinals when they're ready to pick. But if they are there, then, yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr.
If they're there, I think it's Marvin Harrison Jr. If they're not, I think it's Minnesota or Denver or the Raiders or one of these quarterback needy teams that has talked themselves into J.J. McCarthy. And that is, and they want to try to leapfrog all the rest of these potentially quarterback needy teams, or at least solidify themselves in a spot where they know for certain they'll be able to get their quarterback. I also don't think they'll have to trade up as high as 4.
Nah.
Because the Chargers aren't taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think the Giants are going to take a quarterback. The Titans aren't taking a quarterback. The Falcons, I don't believe, are going to take a quarterback. They just signed Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would need to trade up as high as 4. But like you said, D-Mase, the number 4th overall pick,
It's up for grabs.
it's up for grabs.
Yeah.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals. And again, this is a dueling mock draft between Field Yates and Mel Kiper. 5. This is where things get interesting. Mm-hmm. The Chargers sit at 5. And I have viewed, and correct me if you feel differently, D-Mase, I have viewed the Chargers at 5 as the Titans' biggest threat to not getting Joe Alt. That we've heard a lot of stuff coming out from LA, whether it's Jim Harbaugh speaking publicly about how he wants to build through the offensive line, whether it's the Chargers tight ends coach talking about how they want to be an offensive line-centric team, which is...
Yeah, every team should be an offensive line-centric
it's not wrong.
team. Exactly.
Not wrong, but it does feel like a suspicious amount of talk coming out from LA about the offensive line.
Yeah, this is along with the 4th pick. These 2 picks, I think, are tricky picks because you don't know what each team is going to do. We know that Arizona they're willing to sell their pick if the money's right or if the return is right. You look at the Chargers and what Jim Harbaugh is saying or what is coming outside of that building. I just can't see Minnesota moving up that far because even if you look at it, I mean, there's other than if the Giants draft a quarterback, maybe, possibly, I can't see in this scenario the Vikings moving up and having to give up what they need to give up to get that whoever, more than likely, if they're moving up, they're trying to get a quarterback.
I don't believe it's very likely that the Giants are going to take a quarterback at 6.
Absolutely. That's why I'm thinking like you would have to give up a lot just to secure. Now, maybe you're not competing with Minnesota in regards to a quarterback. Maybe you're competing with Denver, and Denver says, well, we want to move up. But I can't see any one of these teams moving up to that 5th pick knowing that, the Giants don't need a quarterback. Titans don't need a quarterback. Atlanta doesn't need a quarterback. Chicago doesn't need a quarterback. They would have already picked their, picked their quarterback first overall. I can't see them. And then the Jets at 10, they're not. So you're competing with who to move up to that spot? The Denver Broncos? Well, I think you wait and see because you don't want to give up too much and then you move up for nothing, really. You're going to get your quarterback, possibly, yes, but no one else was a threat to come and get that quarterback.
Minnesota might be thinking, and Denver's probably thinking the same way, if we don't move, someone else will.
Yes.
If we don't move up to secure our quarterback, then Denver will, or Minnesota will, or whoever it might be. That might be the way that they're thinking. But I'm with you. If I'm Minnesota, I would have a really tough time justifying trading up from 11 to 5. And so what the Chargers would get is the 11th overall pick, the 23rd overall pick, and a first-round pick next year. That is that's 3 first-round picks. That is a hefty price to get the 4th best quarterback in this year's draft.
And you're moving up to give up that much for a quarterback that it's like it's not. None of these quarterbacks are truly a definite, but it just seemed like he came out of nowhere, even though J.J. McCarthy played good football. But I don't think any point of the season he was considered, a top 10 pick or a top 5 pick. It was just so happens Jim gets hired as the Chargers quarterback, head coach, and then all of a sudden this information and this, this world tour of pubbing J.J. McCarthy's name, all of a sudden it starts to come out. That's why I just can't believe somebody's going to move up that far to get him.
3 first-round picks for J.J. McCarthy.
He's not. If I wouldn't even give up 3 for Caleb Williams.
I probably wouldn't either.
3 for no, I wouldn't. I'm giving it. I want a sure thing. If Joe Burrow was there, yes, give up 3. Even Trevor Lawrence. Yes, possibly, maybe.
But even at the time, because it's easy to say, 3 first-round picks for Joe Burrow, for sure. But even at the time, I think it was consensus Joe Burrow was the first overall pick, but there were even still questions about his baby hands. There was still talk about Joe Burrow not being a sure thing.
But you saw his resume. You saw the resume.
Yeah.
And it was just, this guy's going to He's going to
be the first overall
He's
pick.
going to be the guy. He's going to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah.
He has all of the trademarks except the small hands. But everything else, he checks the box. I would have talked long and hard about giving up that for him or a Trevor Lawrence when he was coming out.
Yeah.
But J.J. McCarthy, I'm not giving, no. And maybe somebody talked themselves into doing it. I don't know. But that's a heavy load to give up for a quarterback that he's a good quarterback.
And the ceiling could be Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, it could be.
Which is a pretty good
Which
ceiling.
is a good, listen, I take Kirk Cousins just about every day, all day.
But is that what you're willing to?
Exactly.
3 first-round picks, that is make or break your job. That is altering the future of your franchise.
Exactly.
Are you sure that this guy is the guy? And if it is, if you're talking yourself into it and you tell yourself this is the future of our franchise, he will be our next Kirk Cousins for the next 10 to 15 years, then I guess, yeah, you could justify 3 first-round picks for the future of your franchise. I'm just saying that's not a move that I would make.
Yeah.
But I think that's best case scenario for the Titans.
Yeah, because then it moves the Chargers out of that spot. You would just assume that Oat is there for the taking. But then again, you go back to Minnesota, you're giving up three first round. If you're giving up 3 first-round draft picks or 2, what you're essentially saying is that in your mind, he's the best player in the NFL draft. So you had to move up and give up those assets to get him. That's what Minnesota is basically essentially saying when having to give up that. But I know if you want to be successful in this league, you must have a quarterback. So I get it. So maybe it's not apples to apples in comparison of who's the better prospect in the whole draft. But when you give up that much, you are sort of kind of saying that that's what you believe.
If I own the Vikings and my general manager says I'm giving up 3 first-round picks to pick J.J. McCarthy, I would say, you better believe it better the franchise quarterback, or else that's on you.
Yeah.
Like
if
that
it
is a, if
it doesn't work in the first year, you're gone.
You're gone.
Yeah, you're gone.
So that would be a put your job on the line kind of move. But if that is something that Minnesota decides to do, that's the best case scenario for the Titans.
Absolutely.
Because that is a quarterback taken before you that pushes more of these offensive linemen and wide receivers into your lap at 7. You can afford to be a little bit more flexible. Now, one thing, and this, of course, is just a mock draft. We know that this is not the Bible. We know that this is not a projection of what's to happen. It's just what we have to react to. I would have to think if Minnesota wanted to go to 5, does that mean that the answer from the Titans would be no, to move up to 7?
You're saying if Minnesota wants to go to 7?
Uh-huh. And they picked up the phone and the Titans said, sorry, the 11th overall pick and 23rd overall pick, it's not good enough for us to move down to 11.
Oh, man, I can't say that the Titans would be extremely out. It would just be a no.
Are you out on 11 and 23 if that was the offer on the table?
For them to move up to 7?
The Titans would swap with Minnesota to 7, Titans to 11, and then would also pick up the 23rd overall pick.
Yeah, I think I would do it.
I think I would too.
I think I would do it because now essentially you pick up an extra pick which you didn't have in the 3rd round. Now you move that pick up. Now you have 2 picks in the 1st round. I would make that move because I can still, more than likely, you can do in a sense, but not on a greater scale, but in a sense you can do what Houston did. Houston got their quarterback and then they double back and they got their rush in. Their future, their who they're going to consider their pillar on defense. So they were
their version of their Aaron Donald.
Exactly. Yeah. So they were able to do that because they made the swaps in the trades. The Titans can essentially do that. They can knock out 2 birds in 1 stone. They can possibly get their left tackle and then double back around if they want to get a defensive end, a rusher. They can get that. Or if they want to get a receiver that they deem is still first-round worthy, they can do that. So I wouldn't – if that deal came across, I would think about it long and hard because then you got to think about, well, we're here. What other teams – if you are still eyeing Alt – how can we move but yet still be in a position to get, Alt? But if not Alt, then who is the next guy that you would replace him with in regards to drafting?
I think if you made that move, because the compensation It was really attractive.
I take the compensation, yeah.
And you could also try and sweeten the pot a little bit with Minnesota because you know how desperate Minnesota is for that quarterback. So I think you could even try and sweeten the pot with late round picks or picks next year as well. But I think that you would have to be okay with not getting Joe Alt.
Yeah, if you're making a move like that.
If you move back to 11, I think he's gone at 9 to Chicago.
Yeah, if you move that far back, you have to anticipate on potentially losing Joe Alt. But then that's where, the contingency plan comes in and how do you rank these individuals? How far is the gap between Joe Alt and the next guy? And then how far is the gap between 2, 3, and 4?
Yeah.
So to me, if you do make that move, what you're essentially saying is the gap is a little bit closer than what people may have thought in regards to us and how we've evaluated Alt in the next left tackle.
So rolling along here on the Mel Kiper, Field Yates dueling mock draft. Field Yates has the 6th overall pick. The New York Giants select Malik Neighbors, which I think is a very likely scenario, which brings us to number 7, the Tennessee Titans. Drum roll, please. Joe Alt, the offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, which is zero surprise. And I laugh because every single mock draft that we've talked about and broken down has Joe Alt to the Tennessee Titans. But Mel Kiper writes, sure, an offensive lineman in back-to-back drafts might be boring for Titans fans, but did you watch Tennessee's line last season? Alt is my top-ranked tackle, and he could step in on the left side on day 1. D-Mase, you might feel differently, and I might have a completely incorrect and inaccurate pulse on the fan base of what Titans fans want the Titans to do in this year's draft. I don't think Titans fans would view taking a tackle in this year's draft as boring. Sure, on paper, back-to-back tackles and, last year's draft and this year's draft, that could come off as not very sexy. But I think that's where we are. I think that's how bad the offensive line was last season. The Titans fans are fired up over the idea of a franchise left tackle.
Listen, if you were to take an offensive lineman in the first round, you would take a guard in the second round, and you took a right tackle in the third or flip-flop, however, I don't think Titan fans would be mad.
I think they'd love it.
I think they would love it because you're being deliberate. Now, the Titans more than likely are not going to do that. But, if you ask Titan fans, it's like, would you mind if the Tennessee Titans drafted offensive linemen at least with the first 2 to 3 picks? I'm not sure a lot of people would be in disagreement. They may say, well, we need to, possibly need another receiver. But as bad as that offensive line was the last 2 years, I think people were like, bring them on. Bring as many as you can because we do not want to see a repeat of what we saw in part 1, part 2. We don't want the trilogy to be another bad offensive line. We want to have some redemption. We want to have a better offensive line. So if you told Titan fans, hey, listen, we're going to draft offensive line with 3 of our, 6 picks we have, I'm sure Titan fans would be like, great, let's do it.
Awesome. Cannot wait. And I really do think that it has less to do with the position itself or the name itself because, of course, like we just mentioned, we've been talking up Joe Alt for weeks and months now. That's become a name basically synonymous with the Tennessee Titans as far as draft conversations are being had or mock draft conversations that are being had. Joe Alt to the Titans. It just feels like every draft analyst out there views it as a no-brainer, an obvious pick. So I think it's beyond just the name and the position because, like a left tackle is not the sexiest pick in the world or the offensive lineman is not the sexiest, most exciting pick in the world. You don't think about highlights and, look at that left tackle. Like it doesn't get everybody excited. I think it's less about the position and more about what it means for Will Levis.
Yeah, it means a lot to Will that you can get his blind side protected and he doesn't have to worry about it. Offensive linemen, when you draft one, whether you direly need one or desperately need one or not, it's still not the exciting, sexy name. With the 7th overall pick, the Titans draft tackle Joe Alt out of Notre Dame. Nobody's running around.
I think Titans fans are.
They may, yeah.
Let's go.
but they're not looking at it from the standpoint of, oh my goodness,
yeah,
man, this guy's gonna score 1 million touchdowns and all this other stuff. But
like, offense is sexy. Scoring points is sexy.
Exactly. But then that's the byproduct of having a left tackle that's going to be there for the long haul. Is that your quarterback has time to throw the football? Is that your offensive coordinator has the confidence now to call plays? He's not worrying about whether my quarterback has enough time to throw or if the left tackle may slip or get bull rushed and he ends up in my quarterback lap. So I can't throw the play action on this play when it's, 2nd and 15. I can't do it. I got to run the ball. No, you get your left tackle. You already got their center. They're trying to work this offensive line out. So everything is the way the offensive line operates, the touchdowns and everything else is a byproduct of that. So, it's not the sexy name, but boy, oh boy, just like my clock I got a long, long time ago when I got married in 97, and we looked at that clock and was like, why did somebody buy us like
what do we do with this
plug-in clock, digital clock? Like, this clock was from the 1960s. And you know what? That clock still sits on my nightstand to this day.
And you never have to worry about it.
I never look and say, man, this clock going to run out of batteries or something. No, that clock is on point every time. Time is right every day. That's like an offensive lineman. That's like a tackle. You're like, a tackle? But then you look at 5 years later, you're like, I ain't worried about that over there. I got it.
It is the privilege of not having to worry.
Exactly.
Not having to worry about the left tackle, not having to worry if the quarterback is going to have time to throw, not having to worry if Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard are going to have holes to run through. Having that underlying foundation of the offensive line. It's like, okay, check it, cool, done. And I think it's a testament to how absolute crap the offensive line was last season that Titans fans view a left tackle and view figuring that position out as much more attractive as a Malik Neighbors or a Rome Odunze, who could be, future all-pro wide receivers, who do score points, who do find the paint, who do score touchdowns. Like, that is sexy in the NFL. But that's how bad the offensive line was. That it's like, Malik Neighbors, he's great and all. Yeah, Malik Neighbors could be the next Justin freaking Jefferson. But that's not what we need right now.
Yeah, you need your left tackle.
So that is where we're going to start here is Mel Kiper and Field Yates' dueling mock draft. They have the Titans taking Joe Alt with the 7th overall pick, and it is just a continuation of every conversation of every mock draft that we've had of Joe Alt to the Titans. Is it really that easy? Is it just that simple? Well, we'll continue with what is projected in this mock draft, what the Titans are doing in the second round. And it brings up, I think, a philosophical question going into the draft as far as the Titans are concerned. And we'll get into that coming up next. We'll get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
at one point they had the greatest offensive line in the NFL, and they couldn't help them get any farther in the playoffs than they've had when they've been mediocre. The key, of course, those linemen are usually the most dependable picks. And when you have a chance to get Joe Alt, I think there's no way you could pass him up because he is as sure a thing in this draft as any player.
That was John McClain on the Chase and Big Joe show last week. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, join Nashville Super Speedway in the city of Lebanon for Speedway on the Square this Saturday, April 20th from 1 to 6 p.m. in downtown Lebanon. Stop by and bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400 NASCAR Cup Series at 3:30 p.m. So John McClain says he thinks that Joe Alt is the most sure thing in this year's draft. I always try to caution certain vocabulary words ahead of the draft. Sure thing is one of them because nothing is a sure thing. No. That everyone's projections are exactly that, projections and predictions, and there's all of the research and the film that you can watch and the X's and O's that you can break down and the interviews that you can do, but still players don't come to fruition, even if you do think they're a sure thing. So I always beware of that word, but I trust John McClain. If he says that Joe Alt's a sure thing, I'll go with that evaluation.
Yeah, and it seems like that has been the consensus across the board when you're talking about Joe Alt. Now, I would rephrase it as the most NFL ready. Because, like you said, nothing a sure thing. Nobody, it wasn't a sure thing that Peyton Manning was going to be as great as he was. It wasn't a sure thing. Damn sure wasn't a sure thing about Tom Brady. It wasn't a sure thing about Patrick Mahomes. But the attributes, the traits were all there. The numbers were trending toward that way. But you just don't know. Ryan Leaf was the same way. What happened with Ryan Leaf? You see some other quarterbacks that, projected high and people thought they were ready. And then all of a sudden they play and they're not. Left tackles is the same thing. So to me, I would rephrase it as the guy that is the most NFL ready to play right now. Now, that may not end up with him being an all-pro at the end of his career or, multiple all-pros or Pro Bowls or, a Hall of Fame at the end of his thing. So to me, I will use that phrase. He's the most NFL ready. Now, whether he take advantage of that is yet to be seen.
So as we roll along in the Mel Kiper, Field Yates dueling mock draft, so the Titans taking Joe Alt at 7, which is not groundbreaking in the slightest. I think it's what everyone in the draft world expects the Titans to do at least. So let's move ahead into the second round. Titans have the 38th overall pick in the draft. It's their first only pick in the second round. In this mock draft has a projected trade with the Giants. Thank you very much, Nick. A projected trade. So the Titans trade with the Giants. The Giants get 38 and 146, which is what? 6th round? 5th round?
Say it again. I was just
146.
Okay. Yeah, that's 4th round somewhere. Yeah, it is. Well, no, maybe the 5th round. It may be entering the 5th round.
Late round. Yeah. So the Giants get 38 and 146. The Titans would get 47 later in the second round and 70 early in the third round. So with those picks, it has the Titans selecting Adisa Isaac, the edge rusher out of Penn State, with the 47th overall pick, and Junior Colson, a linebacker from Michigan, with the 70th overall pick. And I'm not going to act like I am experts on those two players in the slightest whatsoever. I'll look at the beast. I'll defer to Dane Brugler's beast. He has Adisa Isaac as the 7th ranked edge rusher in this year's class with a 2nd to 3rd round grade, which would align with taking Adisa Isaac late in the second round. Is Junior Colson rated as the number 1 linebacker in this year's draft with a 2nd round grade? I think that's a little bit more indicative of this year's linebacker class than it is anything. But if the Titans can step away from the 2nd and 3rd rounds, picking up a 3rd round pick, trading back, picking up 2 defensive players at positions of need, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. If indeed it fell like this, because Mel has them trading out the 7th, getting the 11th and 11th and a 28th, 23rd. So essentially you picked up an extra pick in the first, and then the very next round, Yates Phil Yates has them trading out of their spot.
38.
Yeah, and picking up an extra pick. So to me, I wouldn't be opposed to that because now what you're doing is you're picking up 2 extra picks within the top 100. Whereas before you didn't have that. Now you're able to build your team. And you're still maybe able to get the tackle that you feel is closest to Joe Alt. If you are not able to get Joe Alt, you're able to get that second tackle. But then you're able to fill spots on your team, whether it be starters or depth with the extra picks that you got. So if indeed it happened like that, I wouldn't mind that not one bit because they are serving 2 purposes. They're building up their roster while plugging holes, or plugging holes while building up their roster.
If you can step away from the top 3 rounds with a left tackle, a linebacker, and an edge rusher, well, check. That at least addresses positions of need. I can't guarantee that a linebacker that you're going to find in the 3rd round is going to be a plug-and-play green dot as a rookie, replaces your the hole that was created
Well, they need
in
an
Al
inside
Shire.
backer. They need a backer.
They need a backer, absolutely. And I can't guarantee that a 3rd-round backer could, fill that hole immediately. But at least it's, hey, we got depth here and we got an option here, and it's a guy that we feel really encouraged about. So I'm with you. I wouldn't hate that in the slightest. But it brings up the question to me of quantity over quality. That I have no problem with the Titans picking up more picks because the more cracks that you get at it, I think the more opportunities that you have to hit. But I think we would have to think long and hard about it. If I'm the general manager of the Titans, if I'm drafting for the Titans, is that player that I'm going to get at 38 going to be more impactful than potentially 2 cracks at it with the 47th overall pick and the 70th overall pick? And I don't know. And we're not going to know until draft day. We're not going to know what players are going to be available, what players will fall early in the 2nd round, what players might continue to fall to even later in the 2nd round. That if the Titans might look at it and say, look, we just need to address positions more than we need, a surefire thing with the 38th overall pick. See, that's what I don't know. But now we're entering the question of the philosophy of quantity over quality. What's better in this year's draft?
Well, I think you can still get quality in your quantity, but you got to be.
And that's the best of both worlds.
Exactly, but you have to have done your due diligence on these players. Now, listen, every player is not going to be a hit. I get that, but you want to make sure that you are doing what is necessary, that you don't waste one of these picks, if indeed it goes along with what Phil Yates and Mel Kiper are suggesting, that they trade out of 7, they get 2 picks, they get 2 first-round picks, and then they trade out of their 2nd-round pick and pick up 2 extra picks. So if you're doing that, you need to make sure that the guys that you're picking are guys that fit what you want to do. Guys that you've interviewed, guys that is going to be a part of the culture you're building within the locker room. Because I think if you find those type of guys, more than likely they will end up working out. Now, again, will they be all pro players or Pro Bowl players? Probably not. But they are key guys in what you're doing, and these are guys that you ultimately sign back in 3 or 4 years, and you don't have to sign them to these huge contracts. You sign them to a good contract. Why? Because they are role players, but in having them, it helps build your team. And
drafting Pro Bowlers in the 3rd round would be great.
Oh, absolutely.
I would take that every single day and twice on Sundays. But at this point, with how many holes the Titans have on their roster, I'll take a guy who just plays clean, does his job, plays well, stays out of trouble, just does their job.
Yeah,
I'll take that. I'm good with that.
But
I think anyone would be good with that in the 3rd
round. I think they would be able to do it. I'm not too concerned about having more picks, because I'm going to trust that with more picks, it's sort of like with more power, more responsibility. Somehow, however it goes, the saying goes, more picks comes responsibility. You got to make sure, just because I got a lot of picks, I'm not going to just, grab guys all willy-nilly. I got to make sure that having these extra picks, that I zero in on the guys or guys that we want to bring in on this team. Because if they fit what we're doing, more than likely they will work out.
And the quality of the pick, too.
Exactly, absolutely.
Because it's easy to say, well, I think the Titans should trade back in the 2nd round. how far back?
Exactly.
What's the compensation? Because a third-round pick, the 70th overall pick, that's much more valuable to me than picking up multiple fifths.
Yeah.
Want to get into some of your thoughts on this. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Reacting to Field Yates and Mel Kiper's dueling mock draft has the Titans taking Joe Alt with the 7th overall pick, trading back in the second round with the New York Giants picking up the 47th overall pick. He has the Titans taking Adisa Isaac, edge rusher out of Penn State, who Dane Brugler has listed as the 7th best edge rusher in this year's draft with the 2nd to 3rd round grade, and with the 70th overall pick, a pick that they would pick up in this hypothetical trade with the Giants in the 2nd round, Junior Colson, a linebacker out of Michigan, who Dane Brugler has slated as the top linebacker in this year's draft. Let's get into some of your reaction on that. Michael in Madison, Texan, says, I don't even think J.J. McCarthy is the 4th best quarterback in this draft. If I'm Minnesota, I would pick Penix at 11. I like Michael Penix. It's the injury concern.
Yeah, and I think there are people that if you're just talking about the skill set, him playing quarterback, I think people may have him ranked higher, but because of the injury history, that sort of knocks you down, and it seems like it's putting him, because of the injury history, it's putting him outside of the 1st round. Now, I can see him going to the 2nd round. If he goes beyond the 2nd round, I'm like, it's going to be a great pickup for somebody either way, I think. It's going to be a good pickup. But I think it's because of the injuries that Penix has fallen, in this year's draft.
Another texter texts in says, Joe Alt is the most clean, but I think there are other tackles with higher upside physically. So Dane Brugler was on with Robbie and Rexroad this morning, and he was talking about the tackles. And I believe it was Robbie that asked him about the gap between Joe Alt and some of these other tackles. And Dane Brugler highlighted, look, it's not as simple as just this is the 1st best tackle, and this is the 2nd best tackle, and this is the 3rd best tackle. He explained it like it's kind of like a pick your strength.
Exactly.
That if you want a better run blocker, then maybe Ola Fashanu is the better option for you. That if you want to, if you're looking for a more complete prospect, then maybe Joe Alt is that, like a jack of all trades and a master of none. So there very well could be tackles in this year's draft with a higher upside physically than Joe Alt has. But when it comes down to it, it's what are you looking for? What do you need in your left tackle? And if it's just best overall prospect that you can plug and play day one, which is I think what the Titans should be prioritizing, is who can be my left tackle in week 1 and who can be my left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years, then Joe Alt is that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, he is the guy that people deem the most I'm going to phrase it, the most NFL ready guy. I'm not going to say he's the most sure thing, but he is the most NFL ready guy, so I can understand.
All right, we'll continue the conversation coming up next. We'll get into some more of your phones on this. But coming up next, the Titans made a move after we went off air on Friday. What does it mean? What do we think of it? And what does it mean? Could it mean anything for what the Titans' plans are moving forward? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025, 1063, The Game, and the Game Nashville app. Hey, this week's Nashville's best deal is Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card right now while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals. Gift card is only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville. We're talking tackles because every single mock draft out there has the Titans taking Joe Alt. And Mel Kiper wrote in his most recent mock draft, a dueling mock draft with Field Yates, he wrote, look, I know Titans fans, it's kind of boring when you take back-to-back tackles in the last 2 years in the first round of the draft. And I'm thinking, like, no, trust me, it's not. Like, it's not boring. Titans fans want that. Give me all the tackles. Give me all the offensive linemen. But teammates, the Titans made a move right after we got off air on Friday. Traded a 7th-round pick to the Cleveland Browns for tackle Leroy Watson. And look, I'm not going to act like I know anything about Leroy Watson. Took 55 offensive snaps last season. He was a UDFA played for the Atlanta Falcons in his rookie season in 2022. I looked at his PFF grades. It's 50.
Yeah, hadn't played much.
Not very good. Hasn't played very much. And when he has played, all of the grades look not really all that great. So it's not a move that makes you super excited. Mm-hmm. But this is the way that I look at it, D-Mase. Came from Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Who else came from Cleveland?
Bill
Callahan came from Cleveland. This seems to me like a move where Bill said, look, I know him. I like him enough. It's a 7th-round pick. Bring him in. It's a move that was signed and endorsed by Bill Callahan. And if that is the case, cool. I'm good with it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is a depth piece. If it works out, great. I don't see it not working out from this standpoint. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter. If he ends up a starter, I guess that would be great for the Titans because
is it bad?
It could be bad because they didn't. Yeah, it could be either way. But my thing is, you bring in another because this system and the way Bill is going to be teaching it, blocking wise, is going to be new to everybody because they wasn't doing this blocking scheme with this coach teaching it last year. And then a lot of these, there's going to be new faces across that offensive line. So if you could bring in someone that knows, that is familiar with the terminology, that understands how you like it to be taught, it helps guys inside that room because now he can explain stuff too that maybe Bill isn't getting to because he has so many other people to talk, especially during camp when there's 15 offensive linemen and you just can't get around to talking to everybody every day. So you have a guy like that has been in a system that if they have just an off the wall question or just some small, they can defer to him. And he can hopefully answer that question. So to me, it helps.
Good point.
It helps from that standpoint, but then it helps from depth too because I think it was Brian that talked last week about the tight ends and said, "Listen, we only got 2 tight ends on the roster now, but we're going to have more." And a lot of it is just for depth pieces during camp. It's the same with the offensive line. You need a good group of offensive linemen number-wise because camp can be grueling. And as we know, there are injuries that happen in camp. So you need those bodies not only to play during practice, but also to play during the preseason games.
And I look at it like having a coach like Bill Callahan is so nice because anything that he does or says or moves that feel like they're motivated by him, I can trust it.
Exactly.
Because that's the kind of caliber of coach that Bill Callahan is. That's the benefit of the doubt that Bill Callahan has deserved and has earned. And that's, hey, look, I worked with this guy in Cleveland this past year. He's a fine option. Make a trade for it. Okay, cool. Like that's a move that I'll trust. And I will trust Bill Callahan wholeheartedly when it comes to any moves made on the offensive line, in the draft, in free agency, so on and so forth. Like when Brian Callahan came on our show and said, I think Peter Skoronski's a guard. Cool, got it. Aye, aye, Captain, because that sounded like it was coming from the desk of Bill Callahan. Skoronski's a guard? Got it. Skoronski's a guard. But I've seen a lot of questions in the text line, and I saw some conversation on Twitter after the move was made. This isn't your solution at left tackle.
Yeah, this is not. People, this is nowhere, no how. a solution to the left tackle. I know some people probably looked at it and said, "Oh, they're not going to draft the left tackle in the first round. Now look at what they did. They went out and got it." No, 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 no.
No.
If you see what they gave up, you know exactly what the purpose of this was for. It was for depth purposes, pretty much only. Now, again, if this guy turns out for whatever reason, he gets it, and he turns out to be, that guy at right tackle, then okay. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't our first thought when we brought him in. We brought him in because he knows the blocking scheme. He understands from a terminology standpoint because he was in it last year. Then he's able to probably help some of these younger guys, but then it's a depth piece on our offense. So we know at least that guy, even if he's not a starter, he knows what to do.
And if the Titans view Leroy Watson, who took 55 offensive snaps last year, as their option at left tackle, savior on the offensive line that got 2 quarterbacks hurt last year, then my goodness, Jesus, take the wheel.
Yeah.
This doesn't change the Titans' draft strategy. This is not the solution at left tackle. This is simply, like you said, D-Mase. It's a depth piece that your offensive line coach knows, that knows your offensive line coach. You bring him in, and he's an option as a depth piece, exactly. And that is simply it. Like Wes in Clarksville, Texas, says draft picks need to be used for starters, not depth pieces. It's a 7th-round pick.
They gave up a 7th round, so essentially they felt that the guy they were getting was more than likely going to be better than the guy they would have drafted in the 7th round. Plus, I have a history, Bill, with this guy. I saw something in him as a young player that I would rather work with him than whoever you may get in the 7th round. And it may not even turn out to be an offensive lineman. It may turn out to be a kicker or something. So why? At least we have someone.
Don't you be bad-mouthing the kickers now, D-Mase.
At least we have someone that I know as an offensive line coach, a guy that has been in my system. So I would take that over the unknown in the 7th round pick.
1,000%. 1,000%. And the player that you would have taken with the 7th round pick, I have to guess, would probably also be a depth piece. At the very best.
Same thing.
There's always upside, and you never know that, guys that are taken late in the draft or undrafted free agents, they turn into being, solid starting pieces. I understand that. I acknowledge that. Crazier things have happened in this league. But I will take Bill Callahan's word over anybody else's. I will take experience with Bill Callahan and trust that Bill Callahan has in that player over a complete unknown in the 7th. It's the 7th round pick. Yeah. Like if he turns out to be something great, if he doesn't, whatever. It's a 7th round pick.
But you still, it's what it essentially is when you're in the 7th round that late. It's basically close to an undrafted guy. So if I give up my 7th round pick, that's not much. I can always go into the undrafted pool and invite these guys to camp. And then they got to discuss it with their agent, whether they would come or not. Look at the numbers. If it benefits you, you think you got an opportunity to earn your spot, then come here. That means I don't have to waste a draft pick on you. You can come in as an undrafted free agent.
And how nice is it to have an offensive line coach that you can say, all right, trust you.
Oh, yeah. We hadn't had that since Mike Munchak. Yeah.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
It has been. It's a nice feeling to just say, okay, sure, Leroy Watson.
Russ Grimm was
totally.
Russ Grimm was Russ Grimm pretty good here? I can't remember the years he coached the offensive line and how they looked. But looking back at the O-line coaches, Mike Munchak is the guy. So
that was trust that we simply did not have in Jason Hodel.
Now we got it back. Yes.
All right, coming up next, we've been talking all hour about how every mock draft has Joe Alt to the Titans. How so many of our conversations about the draft have been dominated by if Joe Alt's there, you got to take Joe Alt. It's the biggest position of need for the Titans. It was a glaring hole for the Titans last season. But not every NFL draft guru thinks it's as simple as that. Not every draft guru believes that Joe Alt should be the Titans' answer. We'll get into that coming up next. We'll get into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. So we spent last hour breaking down Field Yates and Mel Kiper's dueling mock draft. Even in a dueling mock draft, even with trades, Joe Alt still fell to the Titans, and Joe Alt was still mocked to the Titans. Every mock draft we talked about, Joe Alt to the Titans. And we even have the conversations, okay, what if Joe Alt isn't there? Because that's a contingency plan, an emergency plan, a break in case of emergency kind of plan that Rand Carthon has to have going into the draft. There's no guarantee that Joe Alt is going to be there for you at 7. If, in fact, all of this fodder and all of this talk coming out from the Chargers is, in fact, true, that Jim Harbaugh does, in fact, want to build this team through the offensive line. If the Chargers do, in fact, take Joe Alt, now what do? You need to have those plans in place. So we've talked about, all right, receiver. Malik Neighbors, what if he falls to you? Or Roma Dunze, what if he falls to you? But it's always couched with, well, if Joe Alt is there, then you have to take the tackle. We've even had conversations of, what about defensive players? Dallas Turner is a consensus top 10 player in this year's draft. He'll more than likely be available to you at 7. Do you go defense? Do you take a Dallas Turner and solidify that edge spot? Sure. It's something that I would be absolutely open to. And it's a conversations that we have had and will continue to have over the next couple of weeks. But it's still couched with the conversation of, if Joe Alt's there, you take Joe Alt. D-Mase, you're kind of in that camp, correct?
Yeah, if he's there, you take him because he basically two birds in one stone. You get a player of need, but then you also get a player that is the most NFL ready by many scouts that are scouting him. And then you get what you believe is going to be a guy that's going to be at that position for the next decade at least, barring injury. So, yeah, it's a no-brainer. You take him if he's there. I can't see. There's not a circumstance, I guess, I can see where if Alt's there, the Titans say, you know what, we're going to trade out of this. Unless they trade, even that may not work. Like you trade, but not trade down too far and still may be able to get while picking up an extra pick. I don't even think that can happen because, like you said, Chicago is going to need offensive linemen, I believe. Is it Chicago on their second first-round pick?
They have the 9th overall pick, yeah.
They can't potentially pick an offensive lineman, which you would have probably picked had you stayed at the 7th overall pick. So if you do move down, will you still be able to get Joe Alt if he's there?
I doubt it.
Yeah, it becomes less than 50-50, I think. But then again, like we talked earlier, it may not matter. They may look at it from this standpoint. We want more picks, and we feel that player that we do ultimately draft in the first round will be not that far off from what Joe Alt is. Maybe his ceiling is right where Joe Alt's ceiling is, but it may take him. Joe Alt is NFL ready now. It may take this tackle a year to be like fully ready to go.
Still a little rough around the edges.
Still a little rough. Yeah, and maybe they can live with that. But they're saying at least we picked up another first round in this year's NFL draft.
You can live with it for the exact reason that we were talking about with Leroy Watson,
yeah.
the tackle that the Titans traded for over the weekend. It's the Bill Callahan effect.
Yes.
That if you think that there's a tackle with a certain ceiling, however high that ceiling may or may not be, Bill Callahan's going to be able to coach him up to get there. So that's been the conversation. It's Joe Alt, Joe Alt, Joe Alt. Every draft insider has said Joe Alt. I was listening to a couple different SiriusXM NFL radio shows this morning. Solomon Wilcots, he did his NFL draft this morning. Number 7 to the Titans, Joe Alt. So it seemed to me like every single draft insider, guru, NFL person, Joe Alt to the Titans. But not so fast, my friend. Not every single NFL draft insider. Because Mark Dominic, former NFL general manager, he was the GM in Tampa Bay on SiriusXM NFL radio. Like, he's been in this position. he's drafted. He's gone through free agency. He's had to address those questions of if this player isn't there, then who? Mark Dominic on SiriusXM NFL Radio said maybe Joe Alt isn't the best pick.
If Brock is there, I think that's too easy of a pick. If not, it feels like it's an offensive tackle. Could they take another pass rusher type of guy? Sure. But my gut instinct is that they want to make sure they secure the offensive line. They did what you said, right? You get a pass-catching running back on Tony Pollard. You got Tyjae Spears, who obviously can catch the ball well in the backfield. Those two will hopefully complement each other and work really well. But then they also said, hey, look, we're going to solidify our wide receiver room with Treylon Burks, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got 3 guys, 3 horses, so we don't have to take a wide receiver, in the first round. We feel really good. So it goes back down to me. It's the 3 choices. It's if the tight end's there, I think it's a Stockton to Malone. I think it's a slam dunk. But if the tight end's not there, I think it's offensive tackle. And then if it's not, if for whatever reason they like only one of them and that player's off the board, I think that they might be the first team to take the defensive, take Dallas Turner.
Former NFL general manager Mark Dominic on SiriusXM NFL Radio. He says Brock Bowers is a slam dunk pick for the Titans at 7. Your thoughts, D-Mase?
I mean, listen, Mark Dominic has been doing his job a very long time. So obviously he knows what he's talking about. But I can't see under this circumstance that the Titans will, if Alt's not there, they would defer to a tight end.
He's even saying if Joe Alt is there.
Definitely if Joe Alt
Brock Bowers
is there. I think I can't see them doing that. That's going to cost somebody their job if indeed if you pass on Alt. Now, I like Bowers. I really do. I haven't seen, it's been a while since I seen, even Pitts last year, was it last year or the year before that, when he was coming out. Brock Bowers is a difference maker. I understand that. But what you need is a guy that can allow you to get it to those different makers, that can buy you that extra second. Because we've seen with the Titans without that extra second how things look. They need that extra second. Sort of like the movie Nick of Time, when the time's running out. Yeah, you need
every
that
second. Matters.
Yeah.
It's a game of inches for a reason.
Exactly. Every second matters in this league. So if I can hold you off for a second, a half a second, it don't matter. That benefits me. A tight end's not going to do it for me. A tight end's not going to be. I don't even know how good of a blocking tight end he's going to be in the NFL. He's going to be a hell of a pass catching tight end.
He was good in college.
A blocking tight end. I can't see them do that. I'm trying to sort of.
Would you do
figure it out? No, hell no, hell no.
Why not?
Hell no. I like Brock Bowers. They have, because that tackle position. I followed this league too long, played in it, obviously. That tackle position, even though it doesn't, you want to have a position where we don't talk about him at all. We just don't talk about him unless like something out of the normal happens. He gives up a sack, something like that.
We've been talking way too much about Andre
Then
Dillard.
we'll talk about you. But left tackle is usually, if you get you a good one, you're not talking about him other than saying, damn, he's racked up another Pro Bowl year, racked up another All-Pro year. But other than that, how many tackles are put on the front page of an NFL bulletin board?
For good reasons?
Yeah, for good reasons. None.
Bad reasons?
Yeah, bad reasons, yes. For good reasons, no. And that's what you need. You need a guy that you just don't need to worry about. Why? Because he's doing his job. He's doing what we asked him to do. We don't need to worry about that. That's what you need. You don't need a Brock Bowers now because you have too many holes. Like, you have too many critical holes to fill, and tight end isn't one of them. Brian Callahan already said he likes the 2 tight ends that he has. 2 youngs. He talked about Wiley and how he likes Wiley. Obviously, Chikakonkwo has established himself somewhat in this league. You're not then going to go out and in the first round when you need a tackle or a defensive rush, a rush in, go out and get a tight end. You're not in that space. If you were in the space that Kansas City was in, yeah, you can go get a tight end.
They don't even need a tight end.
Exactly. But you can do that.
Yeah.
Because you got the quarterback and everything's working. But when you're building your team, you're trying to plug spots, that is a luxury right now that we just don't have to get a tight end in the first round.
I hear you. And I found it shocking that Mark Dominic said, number one choice is the tight end. And if the tight end's not there, then you go tackle. Like, that is the biggest thing to me, because we can have the conversation, okay, if Joe Alta isn't there and you stick at 7, do you go with an Ola Fashanu, or does that open up a few more options? Do you go wide receiver? Do you go Brock Bowers? Like, in that space, I can understand it a little bit more. But number one, and I'm not meaning number one overall pick, but your number one option at 7 is Brock Bowers. Yeah. Like, that was what was really shocking to me. But you bring up need. The Titans need a left tackle. The Titans need a safety. The Titans need a linebacker, and the Titans need an edge rusher. But I would say before all else, above all else, more than anything, the Titans need good players. And the Titans need to step away from the first round of this draft. Whether they draft at 7, whether they trade back to 11 or 12, they need to get a pillar, franchise, elite, game-changing type of player. And what we've been talking about is that coming in the form of left tackle, because that's obviously their biggest and most glaring need. But if Brock Bowers ends up being Travis Kelce, it'd be hard to pass up.
Yeah, it would be hard to pass up, but, you can't get to Travis Kelce if you're on your back. If you're always getting up off the mat with the ball in your hand, it's hard to then get it to the tight end, whoever it is, whether it's, Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers, any one of these Kittles. It doesn't Pitts. It doesn't matter. You got to have the time. And I think that's what I think we're missing. We're missing it. And I think a lot of people are getting far removed of fundamentals of football, because it's sort of like basketball. You get away from the fun. That's why I think women's basketball is just so much better. Like, just from a skill set, like fundamental. I think women's basketball is so much better than men's, because they work on the whole floor, like fundamentally everything. You watch everything it seems like everything they do is just fundamentally sound. Yeah. Now, I know some aren't, but a lot of these women are fundamentally sound. That's why their game is just good, like good games. And I think we're getting, from the NFL standpoint, we're getting away from the fundamentals. The fundamentals is block and get off blocks. I understand we got to score touchdowns. That's what's going to win you games. But now it's, we don't need the left tackle. We just get us a pass catcher. When did we get away from the fundamentals of just blocking and protecting our quarterback first and then getting it to our playmakers on the outside? It seems like people want to put the cart before the horse. Let's get the playmakers on the outside and pray to God that we get a left tackle. I can get me a pass catcher in the 3rd round, 2nd round, 4th round. It's been proven in this league. It's also been proven that the receivers in the 1st round, there are more busts than there are hits. I'm sure, I don't know what the tackle position is, but if I have me a tackle there, I'm not getting far removed from the fundamentals of football. When football was established, block and get off blocks. Score touchdowns, yes, and run the football. I'm not going to get too far removed from that when I don't have that portion of my team locked up. The Titans have given up over 140, damn near close. Well, let me see. They've given up over 100 sacks in 2 years.
That's so disgusting.
Over 100 sacks in 2 years they've given up. And people, y'all are still screaming that, get a tight end, get a receiver. Damn it, block for the quarterback first. Get away from that other flashy stuff. The meat and potatoes is the offensive line. Look at every Titans team that has been successful. Look at all of them. All of them. What do they have in common? Great offensive lines. Great offensive line. So if you want to get back to that Tennessee Titans, you don't need to worry about the tight end. You don't need to worry about the receiver right now, because you went and got you one in free agency, and you got another one in D-Hop that's going to be in a Hall of Famer. And then you just hope it works out with Traylon Burks. Get away from that. Get back to the fundamentals of blocking. When you can block, you are an AFC championship type team. When you can't block, you're going to see what was happening. You saw what was happening in the last 2 seasons. So people, get away from that. Let's get back to the fundamentals. Block and get off blocks.
I would have a really tough time if the tackle that you are targeting, let's just assume that's Joe Alt. I think that's a fair assumption to make at this point. Maybe not, but we'll just go with it. If Joe Alt's not there, that's when I can start to have the conversation of, do you feel like you can take another tackle at 7? Or can you not justify taking an Ola Fashanu with the 7th overall pick if you think that he is the 15th best player in this draft? We can have that conversation. But if Joe Alt is there, I would have a really, really tough time stomaching the Titans doing anything other than just that. For every reason that you just mentioned, D-Mase. That we have seen how ugly this offense is without an offensive line.
Oh, absolutely.
That I think we all would like to see what Will Levis can do. And in order to see what Will Levis can do and what Will Levis can become in this league, you have to give him protection. You have to give him players to throw to. You have to give him a fighting chance because, my goodness, how many times last season did he not have that?
Too many times.
Way too many times. So I'm with you that if the tackle's not there, then I can have the conversation. But if the tackle is there, if Joel is there, you're getting into risky territory. But one thing that I do want to address is when we're talking about Brock Bowers, whether you're pro the Titans taking him at 7, whether you're anti taking him at 7, I have a really tough time classifying him as just a tight end. Because Dane Brugler was on with Robbie and Rexford this morning and explained, take the position away and just look at the physical tools. This was Dane Brugler on Brock Bowers.
And crazy, no. Risky, sure. Just because you look at the hit rate at the position and drafting a tight end that early, especially if he's drafted at number 7 overall, he's going to enter the NFL as one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. So, there is risk involved, but like you said, when you watch his tape, you just come away saying, okay, yeah, this guy is just so dynamic. He can be a playmaker. It really comes down, if you're a general manager, you have to have a lot of trust in your offensive play caller that he's going to understand how best to use a talent like this. Because you can't draft Brock Bowers 7th overall and then just plug him in as an inline tight end and not really feature him like he should be featured. So with Brock Bowers, that's the key, is the versatility that he offers. You want to line him up as a slot receiver, he can do that no problem. You want to line him up outside, he can be an X receiver. I mean, he could be a Z. You can line him up in the backfield. You can line him up on the wing. Doing whatever you want to do with Brock Bowers is kind of the key to really opening up everything he can do and what that means for the entire offense, because the defense has to account for Brock Bowers on every single play. And when you're lining him up in the slot one play, but then in the backfield the next, that changes what the defense is trying to do, and that can help an offensive play caller really mix and match and decide how best to attack that defense. So he's one of the best. He's 10 best players in the draft, no doubt about it. Will he be drafted in the top 10? That's a different story. I think if you get caught up with the T and the E, the tight end, just if you get caught up in that part of it, I can understand why you would be a little hesitant to draft Brock Bowers in the top 10. If you focus strictly on what the tape says, what the traits say, the different ways he can affect your offense and affect the scoreboard, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you know what? We know how to best use him. We know how to best implement all this talent that he can bring to us. I mean, how many tight ends you see take jet sweeps and go and make a play? So, I think it wouldn't be crazy, but it would be risky to draft him there at number 7.
And that was Dane Brugler, the Athletic, on with Robin Rexford this morning. And Dane Brugler writes the beast. He probably watches more film than anybody. And he's explaining, look, I understand being caught up with taking a tight end in the top 10. Like, it's not an elite position. It's not a premier position. It's not like quarterback or receiver or tackle. But look at Brock Bowers like so much more than that. Look at him like an offensive weapon. He can be versatile in the passing game. He can block. He can be multiple in what he does. So, yes, I get it. Tight end, not traditionally a top 10 pick. But don't think of him as that. Just think of him as an offensive weapon. That's something that the Titans need. Offensive weapons. Offensive playmakers.
You're going to need more playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. But, I'm not going to sit here and neglect, a true position of need, and the guy may be there for me to take. I'm not going to dismiss that over trying to go out and potentially getting the best, sort of like a playmaker, regardless of what position. He's right from this standpoint. It's hard to just classify Brock Bowers as a tight end.
I don't think that's doing him justice.
Yeah, he reminds me, and people, for those who saw Shannon Sharp play, Hall of Famer, one of the greatest tight ends ever to play the game. He reminds me of a Shannon Sharp. Just take Shannon Sharp's skill set, what he was able to do. Because with Shannon, sort of like Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, Witten, guys like that, they were multiple. You could put him in a slot. You could put him outside. If you wanted to, some of those guys you could run jet sweeps with, but they didn't do that much in the NFL back in those days. But if you just fast forward and put those same guys with their skill set in today's game, they would be used exactly like that. A guy that doesn't really have a true position, but you classify him as a tight end, but he's really not, because you can flex him out. You can put him in the slot, put him in backfield, jet sweeper. That's what Brock Bowers is to me. He's the modern-day Shannon Sharp. The physicality's there, able to break tackles, catch the ball well with his hands, understand the game, blocks really well. So what type of premium do you put on a guy like that? Where do you slot a guy like that? He's sort of like a Percy Harvin in a sense. He's just a playmaker. I don't know where to put him. Like, I could put him in the backfield, Percy Harvin. I could put him as a receiver. I can do it. He's just going to make plays for us. That's what Brock Bowers is. But I compare him more so to Shannon Sharp. If you were putting Shannon Sharp in today's football, Brock Bowers would be that. It'd be a great asset to have, a luxury to have. But what did I say? We can't afford luxury right now. We got to get what we need to get the things that we need. And if that turns out to be a luxury, left tackle, then great. But if it doesn't, then we're going to have to try this thing again. But it's not because we didn't, If that position doesn't work out because you drafted a tight end, you're going to be looking for another job.
I hear you. I hear you, and it's almost like I've got the devil and the angel on my shoulder, of one side saying you have to take care of the left tackle, and if that left tackle is there, who was viewed to be the best left tackle in this draft, a plug-and-play day one starter, you have to take that. It feels like the responsible thing, right?
Be an adult. Do the responsible thing.
Do the responsible thing and take your left tackle and take care of your quarterback. But also on the other side, I think about, you took Corey Davis with the 5th overall pick because you needed a wide receiver. Look how that turned out. Of when picking for need, and I don't think that taking Joel at 7 would be a reach in the slightest. I think that'd be pretty slam dunk as well. But you also need playmakers. You need guys that are absolute game changers, and not just for this season. Like D-Hop and Calvin Ridley are great in the near future, but you're going to need playmakers for the foreseeable future. That's why we're in the position that we're in with the Tennessee Titans, is because they didn't draft playmakers to be 5, 10, 15-year foundational pieces. That's how we got the Flowers, and it's awfully enticing.
Yeah.
But I still have to defer to do the responsible thing. Left tackle's the responsible thing. But man, if it's not incredibly enticing to take a guy like Brock Bowers, that can really do anything that you ask him to do.
Yeah,
you can probably play quarterback if you need him to.
It better, if indeed you go down that road, it better work. And you better not have too many problems in that left side.
But I will say, any player you pick at 7 better work.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's Alt, whether it's Bowers, whether it's J.J. freaking McCarthy, whoever you pick, you better work. Whoever you pick and wherever you pick, it better hit. But let's continue this conversation coming up next. I want to get into your thoughts on this. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Again, former NFL general manager Mark Dominic said on SiriusXM NFL Radio, I think on the Titans, Brock Bowers is a slam dunk. Want to get your reaction on that. Plus, coming up next, where do we think this is coming from? Surely it's not just out of thin air. We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
Happy Monday, everyone. Let's talk about Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that brings sports betting to a whole new level. And I mean that literally, people. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $1,000 no danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $1,000. Zen Sports they also offer true odds on all parlays and boosted same game parlays for all Tennessee sports. That means boosted up to 20% over other books in Tennessee. And there's even more good news, people, and we all love good news. Zen Sports offer a one-of-a-kind VIP reward program. If you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sport events, concerts, you name it, even sport book bonuses, people. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for the VIP consideration, check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. So what are you waiting for, bettors? The daily same game parlay boost. Go quickly. So get going and download their app at zensports.com today. That's Zen Sports, where betting just got better. And remember this, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
do you feel about where you are at tight end?
We need tight ends. We do. We only got 3 on the roster. We'll obviously take quite a few more than that to training camp. So that's a position of need just in terms of the numbers. Feel really good about Josh Wiley and his development. Feel good about Chig where he's at. We got 2 young players we're excited about. But obviously 3 tight ends isn't what you're going to take in the training camp. So there's going to be some spots to add, whether that comes from a veteran player after the draft, whether it comes from a draft pick at tight end. Remains to be seen, but certainly need to add more than what we have currently. We'll probably take at least 5, probably 6 tight ends in a training camp. Generally speaking, that's usually where you're at. So there'll be some guys added to that room at some point.
That was Titans head coach Brian Callahan. Hey, we need tight ends. And we knew that, right? Like, we knew that the Titans needed tight ends, that they weren't going to go into training camp with just 3 tight ends. And he says, look, you can pick him up in free agency, in the draft. Yes, because that's the only way that you can acquire players. But Mark Dominic, SiriusXM NFL Radio, former NFL general manager, says, hey, I hear you. You say you need tight ends. Well, I think Brock Bowers at 7 would be a slam dunk for the Tennessee Titans. As we welcome Willy Donick into the show, who joins us from Pittsburgh. Willy D. What do you think about Mark Dominic saying that the Titans picking Brock Bowers at 7 would be a slam dunk?
I think anytime Mark Dominic, I think, is good. Like, he obviously has tremendous credentials as a former GM. So I listen to when he says things like that for sure, but he hasn't swayed me away from the left tackle if he's there. I think if somebody somehow takes Alt or whoever they think is the best tackle and they don't trade down, then I think Bowers would have to be in consideration. But I'll still believe it when I see it. But I do think Bowers is the most interesting guy to talk about in this draft. Would we agree? I mean, just because we've all watched him play so much.
Yeah, I mean, if you were watching him last season and you projected him last season coming out this year before the season started, I think you would have thought he was a top 5, top 10 pick. Obviously, he did nothing to sway people from that. He did get hurt this season. I think he missed a game or 2, maybe.
Yeah, I believe he got tightrope surgery.
Yeah, he got tightrope, so he missed a few games here. But I don't think it swayed people. But because I think what's throwing all of this off somewhat, it's the quarterbacks. It's the whole J.J. McCarthy thing. You know, will teams move up to get him? Where will he place in it? Because that. And we talked about this months ago, right before the draft got kind of close. That 3 to 6, that's going to be crucial. Why? Not necessarily because of the teams that are in place now, because we don't know which team's going to be in that order. Because we talked about, the Chargers potentially moving out of that spot. Talked about other teams moving up, trying to jockey to get whoever. But it seems like all of these teams or these few teams are trying to jockey to get a J.J. McCarthy. So I think he's the one that throws the draft off as we speak right now. And it pushes a guy like Brock Bowers up in the draft or in that spot where the Titans could potentially pick at 7. So to me, that's why his name is that's why his name is so intriguing.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if it stays status quo, then I can't see him being drafted in the top 7. Brock Bowers.
I also think there is so many questions surrounding Brock Bowers, simply because people don't really know how to approach him, how to deal with him. Because you could say, okay, it's a tight end. You're not going to take a tight end at 6. But as we heard Dane Brugler say, take away the T and the E next to his name. Like, he's not a true tight end. He can do so much more than that. So forget what you think normally about where a tight end, quote unquote, should or shouldn't be drafted. I think that's the second part of it too, is he can block. He's a pass-catching tight end. He's so versatile in what he can do in the pass game and in the run game as well. So I think there's so many questions about what is he? How does he project as an NFL player? How do you use him? How does an offensive coordinator approach a weapon like Brock Bowers?
If he's the 7th best football player, then I think you have to consider him, right? You do have to really think about it. But I go back, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth because if you have the opportunity to get your left tackle, that's a big box you've got to check. But I could see them saying, we'll wait a year. We'll wait 1 year to fill that spot, and we'll just try to grin and bear it this year because we can't resist a unique talent like Bowers. Okay, I would go with that. I still think I'm leaning much more towards Alt if they think he's worthy of the 7th pick. If they're doing the more they check, the more they do their homework and the deep evaluation, and they don't think he's super special, he just happens to be the best, and they think Bowers is a generational kind of guy, then you got to factor that in. Then maybe that's it. But I should have prefaced my first remark by saying the quarterbacks always get the talk going. The McCarthy thing, I still am wondering if that's real. Like if McCarthy is ending up really in the plans in that top before the Titans pick. Do we think it really is that he could be picked?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's going to be.
What they do.
Yeah.
That affects the Titans a lot.
I think it's going to be, and again, not because I have some inside, not because I have inside intel or anything else. It just seems to be following the same pattern that the Will Levis thing did last season, where it just kept, this team's interested. Oh, he may go number 1. This team has him number 1 on their board, and this team's ready to move up. We heard all of that last year in regards to Will Levis, and Will end up falling to the Titans in the 2nd round, which it might have worked out best for him, in regards to, I think they're trying to set him up to be as successful as possible. So to me, this is sort of following the same playbook. It seems like the minute Jim took this job, he looked at the playbook from last year in regards to quarterbacks and teams moving up. He said, I'm gonna run that same playbook. I'm going to throw J.J. McCarthy's name out there and just muddy the whole waters. And hopefully it works out the best for me and my son in my L.A. Chargers.
He knows what he's doing.
Exactly. He knows what he's doing.
He's a sneaky little fella.
So that in regards. But back to, Bowers, it's just, I think in today's NFL, it's sort of like basketball. And tell me when it comes to tight ends, and tell me if y'all agree with this. It's positionless football. Tight end is because you can flex everywhere.
Sports, right?
Yeah, you can.
It's
You can put a tight.
In all sports.
Absolutely, you can. The more positions, like Les Steckel told me, the more positions you can play, like as far as wide receiver, X, Z, H, the better opportunities for you to get on the field.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out as a rookie, why is he making me learn all these damn positions? I wasn't that first receiver drafted. I was the 2nd guy. Let me learn one. But he said, no, you need to learn them all. Why? So then you have more of an opportunity to get together. And he was absolutely right. And that's today's tight end. He's not necessarily a tight end because typically they have that second blocking tight end on your roster. But you have this guy, why? Because he's a playmaker. He's not necessarily, we label him as tight end, but it's positionless football for him.
Right. He's not exclusively going
exactly.
to be
He's
blocking.
not exclusively there to be on the line of scrimmage to block.
Right. And nor is he on the field exclusively just to catch passes.
Exactly. So we're going to you can run the football. You can do so many things. I look at him, like I said, the Shannon Sharp type of mode. If Shannon was in the NFL now, I look at how the Titans tried to use Jonnu in their offense, how they're trying to use Chig now in their offense. That's how Brock Bowers would be used in the offense.
Are you talking yourself into it, D-Mase?
No, I'm not talking myself into it.
Come on.
I'm good with Wiley and Chigakonkwo for now. I'm good with both of them. Bring in another veteran guy, we'll be good.
I'm kind of where Willy is, where I feel like I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth. Because on one side, I'm like, you have to get your left tackle. You have to solidify the offensive line. But also the appeal of what sounds like, and I don't want to say generational because I feel like we use that word every single year. And if we use it every single year, then it's not generational.
Right, we're watering it down.
Exactly. But when you have such a special and unique talent in Brock Bowers, it's awfully appealing. And I don't view this offseason or this draft or the 7th overall pick as the left tackle draft or the left tackle pick. I view this offseason as the what can we do to help Will Levis offseason. The what can we do? Help us help you. Brock Bowers helps a young quarterback. Brock Bowers would help Will Levis.
Yeah, but
That's a positionless thing, Mace, I think is interesting one. You're hearing that in hockey now a lot more than you used to in terms of who's the center, who's the left wing, the right wing. It's really much more of a five-man attack. And I think in football, basketball, there's no question that that's happening, right? That's why we're talking about Zach Edey not being able to make an NBA roster, which sounds insane, right, how dominant he is at the college level. But because all five guys can pass and shoot and stretch the defense out, it becomes a tougher game to match up. And in football, matchup, I think, is the thing, right? If he's a matchup nightmare, you don't even have to put a position next to him, right? That's just a big checkbox, right? If he's creating huge matchup nightmares and you have Ridley and you have D-Hop, that helps your quarterback.
It's the Travis Kelce effect, and I'm only saying Travis Kelce because I believe he's the best tight end in the game.
Yeah, he's
today.
the extreme example of it.
It's so hard to guard him because you don't know where he's going to be and you don't know what he's going to do.
And if he's on the field, you have to pay attention.
Absolutely.
To him.
He just may be the decoy. He may get it in the round. He may get a short pass. He may line up in the slot. He may flex out wide. You just don't know what Travis Kelce is going to do. That's why it's so hard to guard him because you don't know what he's going to do, and he's that damn good. That's where sort of Brock Bowers fall into. But it's still not going to make me say, Titans, if he's there and Alt's there, draft him. No, draft Alt.
You're talking me into it, D-Mase. Brock Bowers at 7 t-shirt. But I do want to continue this conversation. We've got a bunch of thoughts in our text line on what Mark Dominic said on SiriusXM NFL Radio. Brock Bowers to the Titans would be a slam dunk pick. Want to get your thoughts on that. Plus, where do we think this is coming from? Where is Mark Dominic hearing this? Is he hearing anything? We'll get into that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. He scored big this spring with Lee Company and the Nashville Predators in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 toward Lee Company Home Services. That's right, a Kohler home generator or $10,000 toward Lee Company Home Services. Go online to leecompany.com/giveaway to enter. That's leecompany.com/giveaway in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Contest entries are accepted until Saturday, April 20th. Lee Company, all you need.
All right, let's talk Lone Pronto. We're sitting here in Pittsburgh. We got a big game tonight, Predators and the Penguins, the regular season finale for Nashville before the playoffs start next week. And let's talk to you about Lone Pronto because when you say next week, like you can't wait for the playoffs to start. And I know if you're somebody that's sitting there going, I need cash to address some things and I'd like to get it. Well, the Express Equity line of credit can get the cash to you to address your needs quick. You don't have to wait that much. You used to have to show a lot of patience to get money for these things. Not anymore with the Express Equity line of credit. Lone Pronto is a great program. Homeowners are turning their home equity into cash almost instantly. They've got an AI-based system. You can get approval in a very short period of time and then use that money to pay off all your other loans. The average homeowner saves over $850 a month doing this. That's the key. That's why you want to do this, is you're going to save money every month. You're going to have better interest rates, and you kill that credit card bill. Wipe it out entirely. So call for more information. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval, equal housing lender.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, TD, Teron Davenport will join us in just about 10 minutes at the top of the hour. We'll get TD's thoughts as we are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. But now we are talking with Mark Dominik. Whoa, blinked there. Mark Dominik, former NFL general manager, said on SiriusXM NFL Radio, he said that he thinks that Brock Bowers would be a slam dunk to the Titans at 7. And I have to wonder, where did that come from? No one else is saying that. And it's not just any team in the top 10 should take a Brock Bowers, or Brock Bowers is this and that, a generational talent, so on and so forth. Specifically Brock Bowers to the Titans. I can't think that that was just cooked up out of nowhere, out of thin air. We know that this time of year is absolutely lying season and smokescreen season, and anything that you hear is probably a lie season. But is he hearing that from somebody within the Titans? If so, is that something that the Titans are thinking, or is it something that the Titans want people to think that they are doing? And that is the mind in a pretzel time of year that this pre-NFL draft process is.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that goes on prior to the draft.
Right.
And you don't know what to believe, what can be a potential smokescreen, what hasn't been. You know, we connect the J.J. McCarthy thing to Jim Harbaugh because the minute Jim took the job, it seemed like all this information started coming out about J.J. McCarthy. So we can kind of sort of backtrack and sort of pick up where it all started. This Brock Bowers thing, other than Brock Bowers saying that, yeah, I wouldn't mind going to Tennessee in so many words, and everybody just went crazy. Brock, oh, yes, he want to come to Tennessee. Draft him, please. He wants to come here. I don't know where it originated
and
from.
that meant nothing.
Exactly. It meant nothing. I would have said the same thing if I was in the position. Hell, somebody draft me, please.
If I was a 21-year-old millionaire,
Exactly.
I would love to live in
I don't
Nashville.
care where I go. Draft me to Green Bay. It doesn't matter. As long as I'm getting paid and I'm playing, I'm good. So I don't know where this Brock Bowers sort of to the Tennessee Titans came about. I don't, other than Brock, when the question was asked of him.
Like 2 months ago.
Yeah, 2 months ago, but then it died down like a week and a half after, and now sort of picking back up again.
Does Dominik have inside info? We can spend a lot of time discussing this type of stuff between now and the draft. And last year might have been every year this happens. I thought last year was extra with that stuff. So much noise, so many rumors like that, and you'll never know who's got real info. And like you said, you could be Mark Dominik, and you could have a private conversation with somebody within the Titans, and you think it's absolute real info. It's a real source. But how do you know if even what you think is real info is real? Because like you said, Caroline, they might be just putting that out there so it keeps people guessing. Because a guy like Dominik, who has real credentials and real credibility, when he puts that out there, people are going to pay attention.
I want to get your thoughts on this. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to get in on the conversation, Greg is on the line with a thought on the draft. Go ahead, Greg.
That's kind of fascinating that you got Bowers maybe going there. I don't know, maybe you could – I wouldn't think you get past maybe somebody like Chicago if they get Caleb Williams and those moves they made. You throw Brock Bowers in there, even though they got Clement. I think that's a little bit better fit. I want to ask you guys, who do you think the Titans' national game would be this year? I would think with the Callahan connection, and I see Burrow coming back, Caroline's guy Burrow coming to Nashville. That'd be like a nice Monday night game. And then maybe Aaron Rodgers, I see the Jets coming there. That could be an Al Michaels Amazon game. I want to get your thoughts on where you think the Titans will be at on the schedule. But hey, Caroline, sorry about your Tigers. They got that Mississippi State Ole Miss curse.
Yeah, I know.
In the CWS.
But I will say this: I'll take a ring.
Hey,
I'll take the ring.
You got your ring. You got
your ring last year, so you can breathe.
But it is the Louisiana State University of winning a championship and then forgetting how to play sports.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
But usually it doesn't happen to the baseball team. This is interesting.
This is uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Last time five losing the last time that they have lost 5 consecutive series. There we go. Thank you. It was 1977. So
wow.
we're entering uncharted
Yeah, y'all don't
territory
usually
here.
do things like that.
No.
But to the
It is-
caller,
it is-
I'm also wondering if Texas A&M has a AAA team or like they just absolutely annihilated Vanderbilt. I know they're good, but my goodness, what the heck is going on down there in College Station? They take some of that money that was supposed to go to the football recruits.
They must
or
have.
what?
That's the way it seems. But to the caller, they haven't put out the national televised games yet, have they?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so we don't know
because the schedules. We don't even have a schedule.
Yeah, we don't have a schedule.
We
We know who they
opponents.
play, but we don't have the dates of them playing and who has. That usually comes about right around what training camp.
May, June-ish.
Yeah, right before the first time the guys get together for on-field activities. So we won't know until then. So
I think the only solidified games are the ones that are being played in Brazil.
yeah,
at the start
those
of the season.
are the games
That's
that
about it.
we know. But everything else, I don't think we know who's going to have more national games than. Well, I can tell y'all who's going to have more national games. I tell y'all right now. Cowboy fans have the most national games and they don't win nothing.
It's gonna be pick your quarterback poison. So, the Texans might be one of them. Buffalo, Cincinnati, whoever it is. Like it's gonna be whoever the Titans play with, like a premier elite quarterback. Like I don't think that the Titans and Patriots are gonna be on.
Nah, I can't see
Sunday
that.
night football.
They used to
Unless
stick
the
a
Patriots get
Titans
J.J.
Jags game
McCarthy
on
and
Thursday
he
night
balls
every
out.
year, and they're just like, that's the national one.
Yeah, but then
They
it
used to do that.
ends up being a dud. It's a national game,
Yeah.
but it's a dud.
Like a 9-6 final.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of noon starts, and there'll be not very many, maybe 1 or 2 national games.
Well, they get the Thursday national game, which is really like by default you in the national game because ain't nothing really on after that or before that. So that's the default you the national game.
Right.
But beside that, I can't see them having many national games considering where they ended up last season.
Yeah, I don't.
You never know.
Expect it.
They may have one Monday night game. They have a Thursday night game, and I think that's about it. Unless
They could get flexed into something.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Unless they get flexed and they're doing well and they get flexed out. So
TD, Teron Davenport will join us coming up next. We'll get his thoughts as we are less than 2 weeks away from the NFL draft. So TD will join the party coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk League Company. We're up here in Pittsburgh, and we are ready for the regular season finale. A huge game, especially for the Penguins, who must win to make it into the playoffs. They missed it last year. So did the Predators. The Predators have clinched. They're looking to clinch wild card 1 tonight with a point here in Pittsburgh. That's what's at stake. League Company will have the coverage, sponsorship that they always do. We love their sponsorship and love for the Nashville Predators. You'll see their display all around Smashville for the playoffs. And anytime we have radio coverage, you will hear League Company's name mentioned. Go to their website, leaguecompany.com, and look at all of the great services that they have, including general maintenance at home or at your business. And the business part is something you may not have thought about. But if you're sitting there in a smaller business or maybe in a bigger business and it's your job to address maintenance situations and maybe you're not equipped with the people you have on hand, call League Company, 615-567-1000, or go to leaguecompany.com. You could just be sitting at your desk and make an online appointment, and then your job is done. They'll come out and address the issue that you have regardless of what it is. 615-567-1000 or leaguecompany.com. It's League Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3, The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're streaming live on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook Live every single day. And we're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Predators in action tonight, regular season finale at Pittsburgh. We'll get into a little bit of a standings check later on this hour. But for now, TD, Teron Davenport, joins us, brought to you by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. TD in studio today. It's great to see your face.
I was driving back from downtown, and I said, I text Nick. I said, you want me to come in? I might as well.
Come
on
I was
in. Literally driving by, so I said, yeah, let's
come on in.
Yeah.
Happy to see you, and happy to have you in studio today.
Yes.
So we heard from Brian Callahan, Nick Holtz, Denard Wilson last week. 40-minute press conference from Brian Callahan. A lot of information there. Mm-hmm. Overarching question. I know that this is, a very broad question, but just overall takeaways from what you heard.
Well, I'll start with this. It's very refreshing. Absolutely no slight on Mike Vrabel in the previous class, or not class, but staff. Mm-hmm. It's very refreshing to see the degree of openness that we get from these guys. I love it. So that's the initial takeaway. I do appreciate how Brian Callahan spoke about when I asked him about Will Levis and his leadership, how he said that he's going to just allow him to go ahead and grow into that role on his own. And I think that's the right way to do it. You have that. Denard Wilson, man, I smile and kind of shake every time I say his name because the energy that he brings is just tremendous. And, yeah, so those were the things. And Nick Holtz, too. I want to continue to speak to him because I want to see, more of his him speak, express a little more. Because the first press conference, it's wow, this dude is he don't really say much, you know what I mean? But
and
at least we got him to
Denard
talk
Wilson,
this
which
time. Yeah.
It's how can you go after him?
You notice they reversed it this time.
Probably smart on their part.
Yeah. Here's because this is the one thing I do like about what is going on, TD, in regards to what went on in the last regime. Again, I think the last regime had its ups and it has its downs, had its pros and its cons.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest cons, and I think ultimately it came back to bite them last year in the draft. Too much was getting out of the building. It was just too much stuff getting out of the building.
Yeah.
This year, you don't see that. Right. You don't see all of these little tidbits. Now, listen, once we get closer to the draft, some things may get out here and there, but I think it will be done purposely in small little things. But last year and years before, it just seemed like so much stuff, information came out of that building, and sometimes it seems like contradicting information. But you don't see that this year. You don't hear it.
Yeah, you don't see that as much this year at all. The leaks, I think, are a lot less. Now, there's a little bit of information here and there that you get, but for the most part, and that's even with context that I have, it's a little different. But you can't really have that, especially when it cost you the way it did last year, as far as the C.J. Stroud and all of that. You're right. But the energy is up.
Yeah, the energy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. The energy in the building, from what I've been told, and also even just being in the building that one time, you just feel it from the coaches, I guess. Yeah.
And in that same breath, I feel like there's still a lot of information that fans, and myself included, I'll step away from those press conferences feeling like I'm smarter about what's going on behind closed doors, that it's not just I'm not going to answer your question, or I'm just going to, totally deny the question because I don't feel like answering it, or because I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
It's answering it without giving too much away, which I think is a really important and necessary balance as a coach or a coordinator or a general manager. But one thing that I do think is fairly open was about Treylon Burks. Nick Holtz talked about how, look, Treylon Burks is going to get what he earns. Brian Callahan didn't mention Treylon Burks when asked about that wide receiver 3 spot. What did you take away from what was mentioned and rather not mentioned about Treylon Burks?
Well, that's the first thing that stood out to me when Brian Callahan spoke about the receivers. When he was asked about them, he mentioned how they need a slot guy to emerge. So there's a few ways you could take it. You could take it as if, okay, he's talking about designated slot guys because he did mention Kyle Phillips and Mason Kinsey. But then he mentioned Nick Westbrook and Kenny, and he's not a designated slot guy. So you wonder why he wasn't mentioned. And then You got Nick Foles, who said that he has to earn it. Me personally, I take more out of that than I take out of the omission by Brian Callahan, because when I asked Nick Foles about Traylon Burks, he said that he has a lot of potential and talent. But that is not going to get him a spot. You have to earn it. And I think that's the right way to approach it. I commend Nick Foles for coming out and saying it that way, because it's one of those ways where you compliment and then you challenge. And that's what he did. So hopefully for Traylon Burks, that works out for him.
Yeah, because if you're listening, if I'm Traylon and I'm listening, because he's hearing this, there's no way that he cannot be hearing what's coming out of that building, especially you're entering, honestly, a do-or-die season for you. It's either put up or we're going in another direction. So to me, it's almost like you heard what Bill Callahan said, and as a player, you might have thought like, damn. Like, now you're worried. But then you double back and you hear what Holt said. It's like, okay, where am I? Where you're at is where Holt said. It's either put up or shut up. You got to earn your position. 2 years prior, it was I just think that's the right way to approach a young guy like that, because like you said, you challenge him. It's not that you're not going to be on this team, but I'm going to challenge you to get better, because if you get better, it makes us better as a unit.
This is the perfect opportunity to find out what Traylon has inside of him.
Yeah.
Every time you want to know someone's true character, what they're really built from, you challenge them, you put them in an adverse situation. And in those situations, you either rise to it. It's like a saying, right? You get fresher under pressure. Deshaun Golson, the 49ers safety from a while, he used to always say that, and I loved it. Or you look at Jimmy Johnson. He says, adversity makes the strong stronger or the weak weaker. We're going to see what Traylon has inside of him, because this is not a good situation. It's no longer the days when you played where, okay, in the third year, that's when the receiver is expected to, finally come into things. They expect contributions immediately now, and he hasn't done that for whatever reason. So I'm curious how this is going to work out for him. I want to see how he responds to this challenge.
Well, I mean, it just depends on, because I think, I know. Caroline asked that question last week, like, does he want it? And that's the essential question.
Because he can.
Yeah.
That's why he was a first-round pick.
Absolutely. He has the ability.
Yep.
He has everything, just about everything you would ask for in a receiver. He's big, strong, break tackles, has some speed to him, good hands. It's now, do you want it? And the only person that can answer that question is Traylon. I can want you to want it, but if you don't want it or don't take it, there's nothing I can do. So we're going to find out, like you said, TD, whether he wants it or not. Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, that's the question in the building, whether he wants it or not. They know he can play. You can play. I know that, but do you want it? That's really the essential question there.
Yeah, and even you look at, okay, you got your coach challenge you. The organization is challenged. They went out. They spent $50 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To bring somebody in to do what you were drafted to do. And I apologize for banging the table like that.
No.
It just kind of it makes me passionate about it. And I'm not even in this situation. So I can't imagine like how he should be or how he does feel right now, because I would feel challenged. And I would like,
So he'll figure it out.
We're talking with TD in studio. Before I send it over to Willy, Willy's in Pittsburgh. Preds in action against the Penguins tonight. Less than 2 weeks away from the draft, which is wild. It's like I want it to be here tomorrow, and I also want another month of all of this gossip and tea. But every single mock draft I look at, and then I understand the mock draft's not real life, but I always think it's interesting. Different insiders who know different things that might look at needs different ways or evaluate prospects differently. Every single mock draft has the Titans taking Joe Alt. Every single mock draft. Is it that easy? Is it that simple?
It should be that easy, right? You can't help but think of the Wu-Tang, right? Can it be that it was all so simple? Hope. That should be the draft theme music, at least for the first round. But I don't think it's that way. I think it's going to end up being a situation where, okay, one of three things. either Joe Alt is selected earlier by the Chargers or somebody, or one of two things. They trade back. I think that trade back possibility is really strong. I don't think it's as simple as Joe Alt is the guy, even though it seems like, because like it's very rare when you have a top 3 prospect, the number 1 at the position, matching the hugest need an organization has. So it should be that simple, but I don't think it's going to be.
Never that lucky.
Never.
Then what?
Trade back, and get another player, another draft pick, or, I don't know. It's going to be really, really – I'm looking forward to it. I'll just say that, yeah.
Teron Davenport is with us. So, Teron, along those lines, we had an interesting discussion about Bowers. I'm curious, with your personal evaluation, because all of us can sit there and say, yeah, I've watched Georgia play a lot of games these last few years. They've been right in the national title hunt. So if you love college football, even if you're not a Georgia fan, you've seen them play a bunch, and that can set up a bias. But how would you evaluate him? Is he that special that you would need to consider him at 7?
I think you have to consider him. He's a very special player. You do have the shortcomings in blocking. So it's like, okay, how formation dependent are you going to be with him, right? Are you going to want to run 4 receiver sets? Are you going to want to run 12 personnel? Because you still have Okonkwo and you got Josh Wiley that you want to get on the field. I just look at it this way. Okay, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors. Who is going to contribute the most immediately? And to me, that's where I go back to the offensive line, Joe Alt, and I think that would be the best. But you absolutely have to consider him because it's one of those things where you're like, okay, if we pass him up and he's great, like I don't want to be in a Sam Bowie or Michael Jordan situation, right? Right. One of those types. So.
Okay, so here's the other thing that we kicked around that I always wonder at this time of year when you hear all this stuff about McCarthy. Is J.J. McCarthy a first-round graded quarterback from your eyes?
No, he's not. And it's not because of him. It's just like for me, like in watching him, the grade is incomplete. Because you look at – and I'm always going to have that question, right? This is a 5-star. He was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. Jim Harbaugh remained a run-heavy offense. Mm-hmm. In fact, we know the Penn State game. They ran the ball 32 times.
They didn't run in the second half, did they? I mean, they didn't throw the ball in the second half.
32 times.
That was one of the boringest games I watched all year. Nobody could do anything.
Right,
nobody was
so
to do anything.
I take that. I'm like, so I have that question. But some coaches, they stick to their DNA. That's what they do. That's what Harbaugh has done all the way back to touchdown Tommy at Stanford, right? Mm-hmm. But then you turn around, you look at situational football. You look at third downs. You look at times where, okay, they absolutely needed a play. He delivered. Mm-hmm. So that's the part that makes you like, can we stretch that out over a longer period of time? And so as an evaluator, I would be very intrigued by that, but I still think that there's at least 3 quarterbacks that are better.
But it can't fool you to a point where, because there are a lot of quarterbacks out there like that, mm-hmm. that you put them in a position, they excel. Like, you put them in certain positions, they just excel. But then you don't get that extension. Like, they don't play that well for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that's the part you got to kind of weigh. Like, third down, he does well. But we don't know how well he does in the long stretches.
Right.
Maybe that's why Jim Harbaugh decided, listen, we're not going to put a lot on his plate. Because Jim knows, just like anybody else, in order to win championships, you got to have that quarterback, or you have to have everything else around you, i.e. Michigan. Everything else around you is great. It's perfect, and it was perfect for Michigan. And I hate to say it, but it was perfect for Michigan this season. Can he then take that and translate that into the NFL? You can't play that way in the NFL. The quarterback has to be the guy that's a dominant force.
Exactly.
And is he that dominant force?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So, Ron, I have to take a moment. Fan to Met fan.
Yes,
I am so jealous.
Therapy.
I'm jealous that you got – well, we're playing better. We're playing a little better.
Got the win yesterday.
This is about a guy that I grew up, and I still to this day will tell everybody that never saw him pitch how special Dwight Gooden was.
Yeah.
He was like the meteor shooting through the sky. It didn't last as long as maybe you hoped, and he part of it was self-inflicted. He would be the first to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
But you got a chance to actually see the Mets retire his number yesterday. But I'm sure there was probably some younger listeners that are like, was he that great? Like, he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Man.
But, like, there's certain athletes that make their mark, right? I think of Bo Jackson and some other people. Like, you had to see him.
You had to see
him.
Right?
But Dwight Gooden would be in that category,
Look,
right?
Man, anybody that questions Doc Gooden, just Google 85 season. Like, that season was stupid. Triple Crown winner. It was great to get to see that. I made it a point to see that I wasn't going to miss it because I can't tell you how many times I saw Ron Darling, Bob Ojeda, Sid Fernandez. I saw these guys start. Like, I would always – my aunt, like, she would take me she would take me to those games we never got to see, Doc. So I never got to experience it. So to see that energy and feel it yesterday was all that, man. And I wasn't going to miss it. And then to see Darryl Strawberry in the building, the heart attack just like a month ago. Willy Lee Mazzilli was there. Barry Lyons, like I was like, that's Barry Lyons. Like, who would remember who the heck he is? So just like the way that allowed me to go back, and even just riding the train to the stadium, like it just took me back to being a little kid and going to it. And that's the beauty of sports. It's just like music, where it's a time machine and it's an escape. So yeah, man, like Doc Gooden, and then not to mention, and Willie, we were texting about this, the way he's overcome his demons.
Yes.
We all have vices and things that, could alter our life, but the way he overcame it, it took so long. Like, I mean, this dude in 1986, he missed the championship parade because he was in a crack house. This is Doc Gooden, the best pitcher in the league, waking up in a dope house and missed it. But now you look at where he is now, all these years later. He has a son, by the way, that plays for the University of Maryland, football. But you look at all these years later, he's finally right. And that was when he said that in his second sentence, that my mental health is okay. I forget what he didn't say substance problem, but he just mainly just said his health overall is okay. And like, that was worth it for me. I had to fly back because I called myself being a good boyfriend. My lady, I had gotten tickets to Deion Cole, and the show was like, it was postponed to yesterday, so I had to alter the plan. So I missed Edwin Diaz closing the game.
Oh, you missed the trumpets.
I told her, I said, you owe me. So if you're listening,
you owe me.
Liv, you know what it is.
Hold her to it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me you guys this real quick. Caroline and D-Mase, like Teron and I, there's that category. Like Bo Jackson's in that category. I think maybe Penny Hardaway will be in the category of you had to see him, and maybe a younger person would not appreciate how great they were at their best. Yeah. But do you guys have somebody in that mindset you would buddy about?
For me, it was Grant Hill. Nobody knew how. Man, have Grant Hill not had all those injuries to his knees, this guy was on his way to being the face of the NBA. Like, literally, watch Grant Hill. Because Grant Hill was one of those positionless players.
Yep.
He can play the 1, he could play the 2, 3, and 4.
And jump out.
This guy was – you hated him when he was in Duke.
Yes.
But when he got to Detroit, it was like he was a savior. Like, you just don't know. And he doesn't get mentioned.
Remember, it was he and Allen Houston together for
exactly.
a stretch.
He doesn't get mentioned because his career was derailed by injuries early on. But man, had he stayed, it's sort of like you got Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady. Had those two guys, well, 3 because you throw Penny in there. Those 3 guys had not gotten hurt, you would have been talking about all-time greats with all 3 of them. That's how good they were, especially Grant Hill. And then Derrick Rose. I look at Derrick Rose.
Oh, man.
Like,
Crazy.
I was talking to my son the other day about Derrick Rose. I was like,
man,
I was like, you just don't know how good Derrick Rose was.
Killing him, a 2-foot jumper.
Exactly. I said,
will
this
bang
dude
on your neck at
was
6'1".
good.
Well, TD, we appreciate you stopping by. Before we get you out of here, 2 weeks away from the draft, some things that you're keeping in mind, reminders that you want to send out to Titans fans, just things that you're looking at as we approach the draft.
I think you continue to watch the interest in quarterback. how those, like if you see Michael Penix Jr., the interest in him start to emerge. Not saying that will make a team trade into the top 6 or anything like that, but watch that because that could have to do with how teams look at the quarterback. And if 4 quarterbacks go before the Titans pick at 7, like you're really sitting pretty, So that's something
Best case
to watch.
scenario.
I think you watch the visits that they do. You watch the positioning as far as like how people look at this offensive line. Because J.C. Latham is quietly closing the gap between himself and Joe Alt. I still think Alt is better, but yeah, those are some things that I would watch.
Now, quickly, receivers. How many receivers you believe go in the first round?
Oh, man, I think up to 8 could. Keon Coleman and Xavier Worthy. Those I think are going to be the ones that kind of like in Leggett too.
Okay.
Like where those guys go, I think is going to dictate it. But I could think you see 8.
TD, tell us about ESPN Bet.
Yeah, for sure. ESPN Bet is ready to take you through all the huge sports moments this spring. It's the exclusive sports book of ESPN, and it has it all, whether it be offers and promotions from Scott Van Pelt and Stephen A. Smith, from the playoff intensity to getting on the links and out to the ballpark. There's no better time to be a sports fan than right now. And as a new user, if you download the app, you get $100 in bonus bets for making any sportsbook bet. So, again, download ESPN Bet today. What a play. You must be 21 or older and in Tennessee. For problem gambling support, call or text TN Redline at 800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. See the app for details.
Hey everyone, this is Derek Mason, and you've heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. I've shared how they help with imbalanced hormones and how they offer a comprehensive weight loss program that addresses the root cause of weight gain, people. But now I want to tell you about a new laser they offer called Empowered Laser. I've used it, so I would recommend you use it as well. With this laser, Dr. Lodge and Cool Springs MD can help you turn back the clock and take control of your body. And who doesn't want to do that as we start to get a little bit older? I like to call it aging gracefully, but you can call it what you want to. Learn about this amazing new laser and how it stimulates your Kegels, women, in 20 minutes. The only laser indicated for mixed urinary stress incontinence, and hear about the tone feature, which is why I used it. Again, I have 2 abs. I'm trying to get that other 4 so it can make it a clean 6 for the summertime. But not only can you use it for your abs, you can use it for your thighs, which I don't need that. Love handles, I don't have those. Arms and more. Dr. Lodge and his team are ready to help you turn back the clock and take control of your body with the new Empower Laser at Cool Springs MD. So you need to make your appointment, people, and get in there as quickly as you can. And you need to visit them at CoolSpringsMD.com today.
these last few days been like for you and your staff trying to put together obviously plans to win the game, but knowing that you could be out for several days after next Monday, kind of the balance of all everything that goes into that?
Yeah, it's a unique situation. You don't see it very often. A lot of times you play these games and you finish Sunday or you finish tonight and you play Tuesday or Wednesday. We finish Monday and we don't play for possibly a week. So it's hard to figure the roster management, who needs a rest, who doesn't. You got to stay sharp because you don't play for a week. I've been on those situations where it's gone both ways, where I've had breaks in the playoffs where you miss a week and you get swept, and other ones where it didn't really matter. So you never really know what you're getting into. So it's been a lot of discussion, trying to do what's best. At the same point, just playing hockey, we still have lots to play for. And I think it's the more you play, the sharper you'll be as you get in. I know it's a week off, but you don't want to get guys to take too much longer than that.
There you go. That was Predators head coach Andrew Burnett addressing the question that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks since the Predators clinched the playoffs. It brought up the question of, okay, now where do you go from here? How valuable is the wild card one spot to you? Is it more valuable than getting some of your veterans some rest? But the Predators won both games over the weekend, took down the Blackhawks 5-1 on Friday. Some vets got some rest in the process. UC Saros got some rest. Kevin Lankinen was in net on Friday. Turn around back home against Columbus on Saturday, and they take down the Blue Jackets 6-4 in what was at least two good periods from the Predators. Not the best third period, but they found a way to win. So now it all comes down to tonight, the regular season finale at Pittsburgh. The Predators need 1 point to clinch that wild card one spot. And Willy, I have seen that UC Saros will be in net, and I believe there's a lot of speculation that it's going to be, it's going to be the roster, the lineup as we've kind of grown to know what it is. It's going to be the playoff lineup, at least is what I've heard tonight, Willy. So it sounds like to me the Predators are trying to clinch that wild card one spot.
Yes, that's what it appears. That they are going to play to win this game. Andrew Burnett told us earlier today, he says this is going to be like a quasi-playoff game because for the Penguins, it is a must-win. This is the true definition of must-win. If they lose, I don't think they are eliminated per se, but they're all but eliminated. It would take a miracle, and I don't think it's going to happen. There's too many other teams, and they're already behind by a point, so they've got to have this one. You're going to see everything that the Penguins have to offer. And I think for the Predators, that's probably a good thing. You heard Andrew Burnett say the key, and that is there's probably going to be about a week between tonight and the time they take the ice for the first time in the playoffs, and that's a lot longer than normal because the regular season extends for a couple more games. But for whatever reason, the schedule makers have this as game 82 for the Predators. So to do it themselves and clinch wild card one, which I think is their goal, they need at least a point tonight. A win would obviously do it. It would have already been in the bank had Colorado not coughed up a 3-0 lead in the third period to Vegas yesterday. But Vegas made a great comeback. They won in overtime. So there's still a magic number of 1 for wild card 1. So it's a do-it-yourself kind of thing tonight. Otherwise, they'll just have to sit in the clubhouse and watch and see if Vegas wins the last 2 games. And if they did, then they would be wild card 1, and Nashville would slip to wild card 2. So that's what's on the line tonight.
And I will say about tonight what I said over the last couple of weeks about the Predators clinching the playoffs. Just take care of your own business so you don't have to worry about someone else not taking care of theirs. Because like you said, you're keeping an eye on Vegas. Well, Vegas plays Chicago tomorrow at home and then again at home against Anaheim. Like, those are 2 games that Vegas very easily can win. Like, that's a Vegas team that's playing for something and 2 teams that aren't playing for anything. And we just saw the Golden Knights beat the Avs over the weekend. So I would say for the Predators, if the wild card 1 spot is important to you, which it looks like from the looks of it, it is important to the Predators to have a more opportune matchup, assuming that wild card 1 spot does in fact get Vancouver, which appears to be, I think we can agree, is probably a more favorable matchup for the Predators than the Dallas Stars that are playing like the best team in the National Hockey League. Just take care of your own business tonight. Just get a point. But obviously that's easier said than done. Willie, you bring up that the Penguins are fighting for their lives. They lose tonight, and it really feels like their playoff hopes have gone away a little bit, dwindled at least significantly.
Yes, and they had a tough loss, the Penguins did, against the Bruins, which put them from in the top 8 to outside the top 8. And so they're a little down from that, so I'm really curious how they come back. But I think they feel like win these 2 games and you've got a legit shot. Also, there's some demons from last year with this group. As great as they've been over the years, they had this situation last year and lost a couple of key games late. They lost one to the Blackhawks last year, and that allowed the Panthers to jump them and get into the playoffs. And we know what the Panthers did from that, but I'm sure the Penguins guys were saying that should have been us. We should have been in that spot with a chance to make a run in the playoffs. So they're not used to missing the postseason with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and all those great players that they still have from, just a great generation of hockey, really. There's been so much excitement in this city for that team. So it's a little bit of uncharted territory. They were given up for dead a few weeks ago. To their credit, they rallied to get into this spot. So it'd be tough to make up the ground that they did and then fall short. So I think you're going to see some serious desperation tonight. And that's probably, I think, a good thing for the Predators. When you walk onto that ice tonight, if you're just going to cruise to the finish line, you're probably going to get whipped pretty bad. So you better bring it for this one.
It feels like a playoff game tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And not in the fact that, you lose and you go home. We know the Predators are in the playoffs, but for Pittsburgh, it is lose or go home. Win or go home. It is do or die for the Penguins. That's what the vibe every single night in the playoffs is going to be. Every single game is do or die. Every single opponent that you're going to be playing in the first round, ideally the second round, hell, even the third round of the playoffs. Everything is going to be do or die. And like you mentioned, Willie, it could be a full week until the Preds play in a playoff game. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of time. It's unfortunately some time that you can lose an edge a little bit. So I think that this is best case, to your point, Willie, best case scenario for the Predators in the fact that they're not going to end the season with just kind of we can play not our best hockey and cruise to a victory. We're going to have to stay sharp.
Oh, yeah, they're going to have to. And I think this is the question that I think I asked you last week, Willie, is when you've sewn up that berth, whether it be the first or the second wild card, when do you rest your players? And how do you rest them? Because you don't want them to get out of sync.
Right.
Because you want them to go into, the playoffs on a roll, in a rhythm, playing good hockey. They've been playing good hockey. They've lost some, but for the most part, they've been playing good hockey. You don't want to interrupt that by giving them too much time off.
And so if you looked at what they did with the back-to-backs on Friday, Saturday, they rested Ryan McDonough and Gus Nyquist on Friday, and they rested Colton Sissons and Cole Smith on Saturday. That allowed them to get a couple other guys in there, like a Cody Glass, who played a couple of good games, got a big goal on Saturday. And they got to look at Jared Anderson-Dolan, who's been sort of in the witness protection program since he was picked up on waivers, right? He's there.
Yeah.
But he hadn't gotten into a game. And so it was great to at least allow him to get in there and get a game, because in the playoffs, you never know. If you could be fortunate enough to make a run and the attrition starts, guys get banged up, your depth gets tested. And so they wanted to get a look at him for sure. So they didn't rest many guys. And tonight, it doesn't look like they're resting anybody. There's a question about Alex Carrier because he did leave the game early against Columbus. But he did skate this morning, but it's unclear if he's going to be in there tonight. If not, it'll probably be Dante Fabro. But so I think the question has been answered. There was limited, if any, I would say limited roster management, as they called it, getting some guys a night off, not wanting them to play the back-to-backs. But I think tonight is just business as usual, play to win, and try to grab that wild card 1 spot.
So let's do a little bit of a standings check, Willie. We know that if the Predators at least get to overtime tonight, if they can at least pick up 1 point, they clinch the wild card 1 spot. It'd be great if they could pick up 2 points
Yeah.
and then kind of rub it in Pittsburgh's face in the process. I think everybody would be very pro that. Let's say the
I think
Predators.
some Predator fans would love to see that.
Cherry on top. Because that's another thing, is it's not just Pittsburgh playing for their lives. It's not just the Predators playing for solidifying that wild card 1 spot. These teams also hate each other, which adds a nice little sprinkle of fun into this matchup tonight, Willie.
No question about it. So for Pittsburgh, they are so yes. So this is again a little bit fluid for the West. Nashville's magic number is 1 to secure wild card 1. But as you mentioned, Caroline, Vegas has got 2 games lined up that they should win, right, in the last 2. So if you leave the point on the table tonight, you could seriously be looking at wild card 2, which wouldn't be the end of the world. But I think they would prefer to be wild card 1. In the West, over the weekend, the Pacific, I should say, the Canucks got a clutch win in Edmonton over the Oilers to all of a sudden reestablish dominance of that spot. So the magic number is 1 for the Canucks in 2 games. If they have 2 games left, if they get 1 point, they will secure the Pacific Championships. So that would mean Predators versus Canucks in the first round. So that's still the highest mathematical possibility. But I don't think it's crazy to say Nashville could lose tonight. Vegas wins 2. That would put Nashville pitted against the Dallas Stars in the first round. Now, there is one other possibility. If the Stars lose their last game and Vancouver wins their last 2 games, then all of a sudden it flips, and Vancouver is the overall 1 seed in the West, and that could flip things. So there's still some craziness, but I would say high probability as we sit here tonight or today that it's Vancouver versus Nashville in round 1. But it's still possible it could flip.
And that's how I view tonight. Get the point and control your own destiny. Don't be sitting on the edge of your seat watching Vegas over these next couple of games. If, in fact, playing Vancouver is as high of a priority for the Predators as maybe it is for some of us. So I'll ask you, Willie, is Vancouver your preferred playoff opponent?
Preferred, it acts like I don't think they're any good or anything like that. But I think there's just, for reasons that I would lay these out as to why it's the most favorable. They don't have, and Elliot made this point, they don't have a roster full of players that have a great track record of playoff success. It's limited there. And this team itself hasn't made the playoffs in a couple years. So they're not as battle-tested in the playoffs as Edmonton or Dallas. Dallas has got a ton of guys. Dallas has been pushing the last couple years to win a cup. Right? The 2020, 2022, 2023, deep runs in the playoffs, taking teams to Game 7. They've been through a lot of battles together. So they know what it's like for that playoff run. Same thing with Edmonton. Vancouver's not quite in that category. And I think statistically, when you look at expected goals for and against per game, they grade out a little bit lower than Edmonton and Dallas. So I think that's why. And it's still pick your poison because Vancouver's sitting there with 107 points. They've had an unbelievably good year.
And that's the difficult thing that I feel almost guilty talking about a quote-unquote preferred playoff opponent because they're all going to be good teams. Like saying I want the Predators to play Vancouver isn't like, well, that's going to be a walk in the park. That's going to be, 4 cupcake games that the Predators win no problem. That's not necessarily the case. It's just looking at the roster, as you mentioned, Willie. But also there's the other side of it with Dallas that there's some history there. Mm-hmm. Like there are some headlines there with the Dallas Stars in a Predators matchup.
Oh, man.
And I think that would fuel them versus a Vancouver team that, when was the last time the Predators played the Canucks?
I believe December.
Okay, so it's been a minute.
It was a 5-2 loss. Mm-hmm. So
it's not like they're not going to be fired up.
They were 0-3. 0-3 against the Canucks during the season. And all 3 pretty decisive wins by the Canucks. But that was when I think the Canucks were flying high. Mm-hmm. Their first 2/3 of the season was lights out. They could do no wrong. They've leveled off some since then. And the Predators, we know it took a while for them to get in gear. So I think the regular season stuff may be a bit of a wash. And Dallas, I do think there's just great rivalry stuff there. I do think that would be, from a theater perspective, a tremendous matchup. You got the Duchesne story. You've got the Stars eliminating the Predators last time they met in the playoffs in 2019. That was kind of a bitter series, one that didn't go well for Nashville at all. So I think you definitely have a lot of spice there, and the travel would be more reasonable for that series as well.
Let's wrap it up with some of your thoughts coming up next. Everything is on the table. Predators regular season finale tonight at Pittsburgh. Need 1 point. Plus, recap of our conversation with TD and what Mark Dominic said. Brock Bowers be a slam dunk for the Titans at 7. Everything is on the table, and we are right to you coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase were brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
I hit half of my take it to the bank over the weekend, thanks to my man Pete Alonso, who went deep a couple of times to help me out. That bailed me out of a situation where I lost because the Milwaukee Brewers did beat the Orioles in a series. But we do this every Friday, 1:45. Our friends at F&M Bank sponsor our Take It to the Bank segment. It's a lot of fun. And people have had a lot of great dealings with F&M Bank over the last few years because of the motto F&M Bank lives by, and that is banking made easy on purpose. They want to simplify your financial life. They don't want things to get really complicated. Your business means a lot to them. They're in your community. The decisions are made locally. So if you're a business owner, that's a thing to think about. Do your banking with F&M Bank. Your business means more to them. So find the nearest location for F&M Bank. They've got 20 locations nearby. And so if you want something like a HELOC, or you're just trying to get on good financial footing as a young married couple or a young single person who just graduated out of college, you're trying to get a good financial plan, this is where F&M Bank really excels. Banking made easy on purpose. Visit myfmbank.com. Find that location nearest you. myfmbank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Predators regular season finale tonight at Pittsburgh. Preds need 1 point to secure the wild card 1 spot, and the Penguins, they just need a win. They just need as many points as they can possibly get to find themselves in the playoffs. Willy, we've got some concerned fans in the text line worried about how much time the Predators will likely have between tonight and the beginning of the playoffs. What do you want to see from the Predators tonight to make sure that they keep that edge going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that will be something to watch after tonight, is exactly what does Andrew Brunette do to try to keep them sharp? Because as he said in that clip we played in the last segment, he's really never seen that before. Most of the time, traditionally, the season would end on a Saturday or a Sunday, and the playoffs would start Wednesday or Thursday. So if that were the case, then I don't think you would see them playing everybody tonight. That might well be an option. But now, because they have a week and they still have a chance to clinch wild card 1, those two things put together have them playing full lineup tonight. So that's the start, is you play everybody tonight and you play it as if it's a real game, almost like a playoff game. This is kind of like a quasi-playoff game. So it's a great stepping stone into the playoffs. But I think later next week, you might see something. They're not going to have an inter-squad scrimmage or anything like that, but I think they'll probably do some drills or something to try to create some game-like situations. But that's a unique challenge.
Willy, have a good call tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company's up next.
Be love and love on your people. Happy Monday. Peace.